Let's go ahead and call to order the Fall Planning Retreat Council meeting for Thursday, December 12th, 2024. And if I can get everybody, please stand for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic of the nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Merry Christmas to everybody. This should be a very informative and very good meeting. Before I turn it over to Mr. Barry Spivey, I'd like to remind everybody that we have these elaborate speaker systems. Is mine too loud? Sounds too loud, but anyway, maybe I'll turn it off. But if you do have a question, please push the talk button so everybody can hear you. I'd also remind, if you have a question, please wait till the end of the speaker's presentation, because 9 times out of 10, they're going to answer your question during their presentation. And in the tradition of Horry County's Family First policy and values, I'm going to turn it over now to Mr. Barry Spivey for the overview.
Okay. Good morning and welcome. We look forward to the opportunity of sharing various pieces of information with you to update you on where we are and the things we're seeing coming up. That this is the first step in the process of our interaction so that we can get to a budget in the spring in that regard. And I'm going to share several thoughts with you here just to give you a quick outline of what we will address today. We have various discussion topics. Just remind you as well, this is an informal setting, and we appreciate your questions and your feedback in that regard, because that's truly valuable for us. We will first touch on our 2024 financial update. We will look at our 5-year forecast as it relates to all of our major operating funds. We will look at our capital improvement program as well as our debt service projections, and those will be updated based on our actual results for fiscal year 2024. We'll be looking at various strategic issues is the way we would phrase it. We'll look at things that are going on at the airport and things coming, a ride update, the local road plan, the public safety update, as well as our future operational needs. We'll also review some of our major programs related to ARPA and also have an action item for your consideration for an ARPA actual funding and a debris reserve increase in light of everything that has occurred with Hurricane Helene in the state of South Carolina, as well as North Carolina and Georgia. We certainly recognize that need could be very great for us, and the opportunity presents itself that we can increase our reserve a little bit, and we would suggest that we consider that, but we'll go over that as a part of the presentation. Just in some prefacing comments, I do want to share with you, that Horry County does not make revenue. We do not sell goods or services that people choose to buy. We actually impose on our taxpayers taxes and fees for the services that we provide to them. I also wanted to share with you, we're a pass-through entity. We bring money in, we spend that money that we bring in, and that's how we're designed to operate in that respect. Horry County is a service organization. The services that we provide are only provided through our people, our team members. That's how we accomplish the goals that we set. 70% of our general fund is people. It's the cost of our employees in that regard. And our team members are our greatest resource. We've used the term many times that they're our greatest asset, but I'll use the term resource. because it's to be cultivated and stewarded to the best possible outcome. The better they are trained, the better services we can provide. The more experience they have, the more equipment, the skills to do the job, the better service that we can provide to our constituents. And really, our services are focused on two fronts. Many times we sit here as a county and we think about the unincorporated areas of Horry County. And we have primary service responsibility in the unincorporated areas for many things. Our police, our fire, our code enforcement, planning and zoning, the maintenance and support services to support them, as well as business licenses, grants, CDBG, communications, stormwater, watersheds, road maintenance, parks and recs, our unincorporated waste collection system. All those things we provide as the primary service provider in the unincorporated areas. But what we don't think about sometimes is the impact we have on all the county as a whole. And in fact, I believe there's only one council district that does not have a portion of a municipality within that, and that's District 6. Everybody else has one or more municipalities within their jurisdiction in that respect. And we provide countywide services, and some have 3 actually in them. We provide countywide services for EMS, for solid waste, for 911 communications, our assessor, auditor, and treasurer, that whole tax-related system for the entire county, our clerk of court, and all the court system, in essence, we provide on a countywide basis. Our emergency management, the sheriff, Veterans Affairs, the ROD, the museum, the library system, probate court, master and equity, the MIAP, the Medically Indigent Assistance Program, it benefits countywide, registration elections, our support of the state health services, our support of the state social services, the state mental health services, and the state alcohol and drug services. We all have a hand in as a government, as the county government. Senior services, higher education support, our road planning and construction with the RIDE program, our animal shelter, our airports, the state delegation office, the coroner, the detention center, police support, economic development, solicitor, public defender, victim witness, and the list just goes on. We support the entire county, every person that is within all of Horry County, including every one of the municipalities. We focus sometimes on what happens in the unincorporated areas, but really our impact is countywide. And there's more impact countywide than there is in the unincorporated areas in that respect. Today, we are being impacted on an ongoing basis by inflation. And you will see some comments about that in the presentations today. But we got notice even just yesterday of our increases in the state insurance reserve fund cost. Some of the rates going up by as much as 30%. Not all, but some that high. We know we still have inflation impacts on our equipment, contractual services, our health insurance. We expect to have an increase in that as well at the state level. And we find ourselves in a situation where we need to address our salaries. We will be asking for a change in our policies related to our budgeting practices to allow us to forecast our salaries a little more precisely and include a vacancy variance. That will give us the opportunity to use additional funds there to be able to compensate our employees and grow for the positions that we know we need to keep our level of services correct. But I will just caution you, and maybe that's the right term, as we move forward, as we look at enhancements, as we look at new issues, and if we look at the level of services that we need to provide, it may require that there's a millage increase. And I'll just share that up front. So we are looking today for your guidance and your input to help us bring back to you the most comprehensive solution at our spring retreat to address the needs of the county in fiscal year 2026.
Thank you, sir. That was excellent. And it needed to be said. I think a lot of people overlook the fact that we are a service industry, and we're also a donor county.
Yes.
And I would like to see that change. And I don't know if that will change in our lifetime, but it certainly needs to change. We send a tremendous amount of money to Columbia, and we don't get it back. So hopefully we can, well, it's something that it would be fair and it would be equitable to get that done. So thank you, sir. We
All right,
appreciate it.
thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for reminding me about that. Thank you, sir. Ms. Todd.
Good morning. Today we're going to kick things off with a review of the fiscal year 24 financial results. Bear with me, it is a lot of numbers. So starting with our general fund for 2024, we had revenues of $271 million. This exceeded our budget projection by $19 million and exceeded prior year by just under $29 million. Expenditures for the year were $220 million, which was $24 million less than budget. Other financing sources and uses of just under $25 million, right in line with budget, resulting in adding an additional $25.6 million to fund balance for the year, leaving the general fund balance total at $160.7 at the end of the fiscal year. Looking at revenues by category in general fund, we saw the largest increases over budget in property taxes at $6.5 million and interest earnings at $5.7 million. We also had large increases in business license and hospitality A-tax at $1.6 million each, and EMS at $2.3 million. Looking at expenditures by category in general fund, personnel services was under budget by $10.9 million. We also saw savings in contractual services at $4.9 million, supplies and materials at $3.8 million, and business and transportation at $2.7 million. Looking at our fire fund, we had revenues of $40.2 million, expenditures of $32.9 million, with a net change of $7.4 million to fund balance for the year. Road maintenance and CTC fund, revenues of $25.8 million, expenditures of $15.2 million, resulting in a net change of $10.8 million to fund balance for the year. And our beach renourishment fund had a net change of $1.9 million to fund balance for the year as expected. Stormwater fund, revenues of $17.4 million and expenditures of $11.5 million. Net change of $3.4 million to fund balance for the year. Recreation fund had revenues of $10.7 million, expenditures of $6.7 million, and a net change of $2.9 million to fund balance for the year. And our waste management fund had revenues of $19.7 million, expenditures of $12.2 million, with a net change of $2.2 million to fund balance for the year. To summarize the governmental funds, we see the general fund adding the $25.6 million to fund balance, putting the total at the end of the fiscal year is $160 million. Our capital improvement plan increased by just under $26 million, and this is due to the borrowing for the 3 new rec centers, bringing that total to $142 million. Round 2 fund had a change in fund balance of $3.9 million for the year, bringing total to $73 million, and Round 3 had a change in fund balance of $74.4 million for the fiscal year, with a total of $523 million. ARPA had a change in fund balance for the year of $19 million. This is mainly due to the swap and interest, bringing that total to $48 million, and our hospitality projects of $13.5 million, bringing that total to $124 million. Our special revenue funds, which include fire, road maintenance, waste management, stormwater, recreation, all combined added just under $30 million, with a total of $174 million. Capital saw a change in fund balance for the year of $8.1 million, bringing that total to $23 million, and debt service at $697,000, bringing that total to $12 million. In total, fund balance had an overall change of $201 million, and for all governmental funds combined, we're looking at $1.2 billion in fund balance at the end of fiscal year 24. So bringing all these together, you see the governmental funds we just detailed at the top. Add in our capital assets of $80 million. Also add in our unavailable revenue, liabilities, pension, OPEB, bonds, and arbitrage, as well as our capital lease outstanding and our internal service funds for a total of $19 million, resulting in the end of fiscal year with a net position of $2.1 billion. When adding in the airport to this net position of $439 million, we ended the fiscal year with a total for Horry County as a whole at $2.5 billion. Lastly, I wanted to show a breakdown of the unassigned fund balance for the end of the fiscal year. So for general fund, after setting aside our reserves and commitments, we have an unassigned fund balance of $43.8 million. Fire fund ended the fiscal year with an unassigned fund balance of $8.8 million. Recreation fund of $3.2 million. Stormwater fund of $4.5 million. And waste management of $7.9 million. As Barry mentioned earlier, we do have a resolution for your consideration to go with waste management unassigned fund balance, and that is to increase the debris reserve by $2.5 million to come from that unassigned fund balance. Next, we'll move into the 5-year financial forecast. As you can see, mostly green here across all funds with just a couple yellows. All funds are relatively in a good spot with a conservative approach to our revenue projections and also maintaining current level of service with estimated growth. So for general fund specifically, within this projection, our population growth and tourism impacts are included. General fund does absorb a bulk of our inflationary increases, but do recognize this projection does not include any additional positions to increase our levels of service or the use of vacancy variance. Fire fund, within the projection, our population growth and tourism impacts are included. Our current existing revenues are sufficient to cover recurring expenditures. Fire apparatus fund, do recognize this one as yellow due to our current fleet age and condition. As we continue to grow with a number of stations, we will require higher replacement revenue in the coming years. Our road fund is yellow as well. This is due to the funds tied up with the lawsuit and increasing construction costs. However, there is sufficiency in recurring revenue. Waste management fund, we do see inflationary impacts here as well as capital as to combat continued growth, and we are sufficient in recurring revenue as well. Beach renourishment fund, relatively good place here. We have sufficient fund balance to cover this year's current project within Arcadian Shores. Stormwater fund is in a good place. There is sufficiency in recurring revenues to maintain current level of service. However, frequency of large events is always a concern. Recreation fund is in a neutral place. This projection does include an additional revenue and expenditure for the 3 new centers, as well as all operational costs for the Rural Civic Center. There is sufficient revenue here to maintain the current level of service. For E911, we're in a good place as well. This is a restricted fund for capital and limited operations. There is a current sufficient recurring revenue, but a possibility for the state to reduce funding in the coming years. If that is to happen, general fund would need to absorb these expenditures. And lastly, Economic Development Fund is in a good place. That contract was extended through 2027, and they have sufficient recurring revenues as well. Any questions?
Thank you very much. All right, next.
Good morning. I'm here to give you a brief overview of the capital improvement plan and debt service for the next 10 years. This is a breakdown of funding sources for FY25. Our projected funding is $38 million, with $4.9 million coming from the general fund, just over $6.1 million coming from the stormwater fund, $5.1 million in impact fee funding, intergovernmental at $820,000. That is from Sunday alcohol sales and CTC funding. The road fund is contributing just over $11 million, and other funds at $10.4 million. And these are emergency telephone, fire, recreation, and waste management recycling. So this is a list of FY25 projected expenditures broken down into categories. Public safety facilities, $450,000. All those are recurring life cycle maintenance for detention and fire. General government facilities at $1.5 million. The big project here is the ROD customer service area renovation and life cycle maintenance. Infrastructure and regulation facilities at $2.5 million. That is for relocation of the recreation center offices. Parks, trails, boat landings, and beach accesses at $4.6 million. We have several projects here, including outdoor pickleball courts at South Strand, an accessible playground at Michael Morris Graham, and Rosewood Boat Landing. And all of those projects are funded through impact fees. Public safety technology and equipment at $2.7 million. The large project here is for the 911 system replacement to replace their CPUs and servers that are end of life, and all other projects there are continuing projects. General government technology and equipment at $2.4 million. New projects here are website ADA compliance software, and you'll hear a little bit more about that later. And fleet washdown units for equipment that we use on our beaches. Stormwater fund, $6 million. These are all continuing projects to continue their drainage improvement efforts. Waste management and recycling at just under $4.3 million. The big project here is the replacement of the Long Center due to growth in that area. Public transportation infrastructure at $11.6 million. Again, these are all ongoing programs to continue their efforts. And wetland mitigation, these are carry forward monies for construction of the wetland mitigation bank, and you will also receive an update on that later, and that's $914,000. So again, the total projected expenditures for FY25 is just over $38 million. And I will note that there are no bond issuances for FY25, so all of these projects are paid for with cash on hand. So looking at the 10-year view of the projected expenditures, for public safety facilities at $144 million. Major projects here are going to be the Prestwick Fire Station and the renovation of the J. Reuben Long Detention Center bow tie building. General government facilities at just over $58 million. The major project here is renovation to this building. INR facilities at $5.9 million. Again, we have the recreation office relocation and a new public works equipment shed, or public works maintenance shed. Parks, trails, boat landings, and beach accesses at almost $42 million, with projects in all of those areas. And again, the majority of funding here is coming from impact fees. And waste management and recycling at just under $26 million. And we have the Long Center relocation, a new Forest Brook facility, and replacement of the Brooksville Center. And again, this is another place where a majority of the funding is coming from impact fees. Public safety technology and equipment at almost $18.5 million. Again, we have the 911 system replacement, which was previously mentioned, and then we have Motorola radio upgrades, as well as some other ongoing programs. General government technology and equipment at almost $18.6 million. We are replacing the AC unit at the technology building, and again, the ADA compliance software, which you will hear about shortly. Stormwater management at just over $30 million. These are, again, all projects that are ongoing to continue their efforts. Public transportation infrastructure at $130.5 million. And again, all ongoing projects to continue their efforts. And finally, wetland mitigation at $914,000. So our 10-year projected expenditure total is just under $477 million. Now, I'll mention this is not an all-inclusive list. The complete CIP is in your packet and in the attachment section if you want to look at that. And it also does not include airport projects or the RIDE program projects, which are on separate plans. So looking at the 10-year funding, the total again is just under $477 million, with almost $35 million coming from the general fund, $31 million from the stormwater fund, almost $44 million from impact fees, $8.2 million in intergovernmental revenue, $125.5 million from the road fund. General obligation funds, or general obligation bonds are contributing $164 million, and fire bonds at almost $23 million, with other funds at just over $46 million.
What's included in that intergovernmental fund?
That would be CTC funding and Sunday alcohol sales.
Where would the local government fund and revenues from the state legislature be shown in our?
That's actually not in this plan.
It would be in general fund?
Yes.
Okay.
This is just a more consolidated look at the projected expenditures by category. So this slide shows our bonding capacity. These are the years that we anticipate debt issuances. You can see that our 10-year total for GO bonds, general obligation, is just over $164 million, and fire bonds at almost $23 million, for a total of almost $187 million. I will mention that this is working within our existing debt millage, so if additional projects are desired, we would have to shift things around or look at increasing our debt millage. This is our general debt service. This graph shows our existing and future debt issuances from 2024 to 2033. Again, this is working within our existing debt millage. And I will note that a change in the impact fee structure could affect our borrowing capacity. If recreation centers are adopted into the impact fees, that would increase our capacity, as those fees could go to pay a portion of this existing debt service. This is our fire debt service. Again, it shows existing and future debt issuances for the same year or same 10-year period. And impact fees are going to pay a portion of this debt service. So that was a lot about what we have planned. And now I'll show you some of our recently completed projects. First, we have the library administration building. This was completed in November. Renovations were done to add office space and restrooms. A large deck and additional parking were also added. The coroner cooler project, they had outgrown their existing space, so this actually tripled their storage capacity, and it is up and running, and all equipment has been received there. Parks and Recreation playgrounds. New playgrounds were constructed at PD Park, Loris Nature Park, and Socastee Recreation Park. Loris and Socastee are accessible playgrounds, and PD Park is ADA compliant. Impact fees were used to pay for a portion of the playgrounds at Loris Nature Park and Socastee Recreation. And the top is PD Park, the middle is Loris Nature Park, and the bottom is Socastee. And now some of the projects that we have in progress. We have Central Coast Complex. Progress has slowed slightly here, but we are still moving forward.
Let me turn on my microphone. It is behind. It has not slowed substantially, but it is behind schedule because of some contractual issues.
What is our anticipated completion date?
The fall of next year. Early fall.
Of 25?
Yes, sir.
And Socastee Fire expansion. Construction is complete on the expansion portion of this project. This was paid for through impact fees, and we are still working on the renovation of the original building, which you can see in that picture on the left. Public Works Equipment Shed. We have a concrete pad, and we expect placing of steel in the next week or so. And finally, Michael Morris Graham Playground. Construction is in progress for this playground, and this is another project that was funded through impact fees. And these are just some of our other ongoing projects that we have underway and what phase they are currently in. And that is all I have for you. If you have any questions.
I really appreciate the way they do their presentation and all the hard work on the turnout. Really grabs my attention, and I'm sure y'all feel like quality is good, and it's really nice.
Thank you.
Very good.
Next up, we have strategic issues, starting with the airports, Ms. Olmsted.
Yes, good morning. I would like to share the capital projects we completed, the airport completed in fiscal '24, and the projects currently in process in fiscal '25. I also have an update on the terminal expansion, as we are just 12 months away from its completion. The rental car ready lot booths provide an alternative for arriving customers to conduct their rental transactions near the ready lot and avoid a possible line inside the rental car building. The cost of this project was $1.4 million, paid with contract facility charges, and it was completed this past summer. The taxiway and runway at Conway were rehabilitated in the spring of 2024 with a total cost of $6.6 million, supported by both an FAA grant and also a State Aeronautics Commission grant. An Oshkosh fire truck was also purchased in fiscal '24 for a price of $1.3 million and supported by airport funds. Lastly, in fiscal '24, an expanded cell lot and an additional 450 spaces were added to our long-term parking for a cost of $2.5 million. The cell lot features a new arrival board so our public can track an arriving flight easily. In fiscal '25, we have several ongoing projects. Of note would be the addition of parking lot E with 1,200 additional spaces, 2 new T hangars with 10 bays each, an additional landing pad for our executive helicopter tenant and paid by the tenant, the enabling pavement projects for the future runway rehabilitation project, rehabilitation of an older Air Force pump house, which sends fire suppression to our GA hangars, and last but not least, our terminal expansion scheduled for completion around Christmas of 2025. As you know, our architect for this project is Gresham Smith, program manager is Answer Advisory, and our contractor is a joint venture of J.E. Dunn and Southside Constructors. These familiar renderings are the exterior and interior in completed status. Up to date here, concrete piles have been poured. The elevator pit for the expansion has been formed and is now finished. And we are currently receiving and hanging steel. These are various shots of the steel being hung. As you can see, it is taking shape outside of our existing Concourse A. In addition, terrazzo floors are being poured throughout the upstairs level, and all bathrooms are being completely renovated to state-of-the-art features. In response to our significant growth and also planning for our future, we wish to add 22 new positions, although not right away on July 1st. These requests cover 6 departments and are due primarily to our new terminal expansion and also a 14.2% increase in passenger traffic when comparing January through October of '23 to '24. And I am available to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Excellent, excellent presentation. Next up, Ms. Tranter with the opioid update.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be before you today to talk about the accomplishments of others, particularly our public safety teams who've done a great deal of work in terms of opioid remediation in our communities. To give you a brief overview of how these funds are structured, we have funding from the settlement of lawsuits, and these are lawsuits related to opioid manufacturers, distributors, et cetera. And the state acts as a clearinghouse for all of this funding. The balances change over time as new settlements are made, and then the state actually distributes those funds to us on an application basis. Some of you may remember the tobacco lawsuits of many years ago, and in those cases, those lawsuits necessarily weren't tied in terms of settlement dollars to the results of tobacco. So you might have seen that those funds go into economic development. You may have seen those funds go into other types of initiatives over time. Here, the settlement dollars are tightly coupled to responses to the opioid epidemic. And so there is a list of approved uses, and our uses need to fall within those for our guaranteed funds, and the board oversees this. So the funds go from roughly 2021, 2022 timeframe to 2038. So it is a long-term investment, and that long-term investment, again, the totals keep changing because settlements continue to be made, but over time, that'll be about $22 million as of today. So as we look at the approved uses, we see prevention, treatment, and other strategies. Prevention is harm reduction, education that we do through many of our units. Then also treatment services. How do we connect people with treatment? How do we address the needs of all of the people that Horry County comes into contact with through its units? Also, how do we address the needs of the criminal justice involved individuals who need recovery assistance? These are under the treatment category. Other strategies involve care for first responders, leadership planning and coordination, and also training and research. Just to give you an idea of what we're responding to, Horry County was ranked #1 on the most vulnerable county list for overdose rates, transmissible diseases, and available resources for remediations based on then DHEC, the most recent vulnerability study, which I believe was around 2022. Also, we rank highly, ranked second in all drug overdose deaths among all 46 counties. And Medicaid claims show a statistically significant increase in emergency department admissions and increased utilization for all age groups. So again, they aren't able to point to a particular age group where we need to be responding. It really is something that affects the entire community and also the hospitals within our communities. Just taking a look at some of the data trends of suspected overdoses, suspected fatalities, and naloxone administrations. You can see these go up and down a little bit over time. We like to think that some of the declines in 2023 are in response to some of the efforts that we've made, but over time, the data will prove that out. Our question, since 2023, the city of Myrtle Beach and the county have worked to saturate communities with Narcan and the education on when and how to use Narcan. So you're going to see the naloxone saturation indicators change over time as well. And we're getting the naloxone donated from state sources right now, about $16,000 worth to Horry County Fire Rescue. One question that we had as we were establishing these programs is how do we address the crisis at the points where the county encounters these populations? So there are natural times when fire rescue, when the police, when the court systems, when JRL encounter people in need or in crisis who can be diverted to treatment. So our question is, how do we develop programs to really take advantage of those contacts in order to get people the resources that they need. And I want to highlight one program with Horry County Fire Rescue. There are now 4 harm reduction specialists in Horry County Fire Rescue. And what Fire Rescue does is they provide post-overdose follow-up. They look at the previous day's calls. They see, all right, out of these previous days' calls, who needs to be followed up with? Who may need some resources? Can we sit down with them and their family? And they conduct home visits. They also conduct education and outreach, so people in hospitals and treatment centers know that they exist and can assist with the care of individuals. And so far, more than 2,000 individuals have been served through this program that really started in November of 2023. So that's an incredible number. One of the things that I wanted to do was to include a text message that was actually received by Horry County Fire Rescue so that you can see that addiction often occurs at the intersection of multiple life circumstances, all of which need to be addressed. Here you see, I was told about you in a group I'm involved in with for parents of addiction. Again, we're not talking to the individual, we're talking to the parent. My son struggles with depression and addiction. He's going to be evicted. Again, housing instability. Do you know a place he can stay? He's trying. He just got a job. Okay, so there was a history of job insecurity. His landlord found him having a seizure today, and he's evicting him in case he thinks it was an overdose. Again, this was a message to fire rescue. But there are a lot of things wrapped up in that one text message that let you know that this person needs help at several different levels. So, in a fundamental sense, our fire rescue personnel, our 4 people who work as harm reduction specialists, are working to get them the resources that they need, because resources can be hard to navigate in the best of circumstances. And sometimes our public safety units don't meet people at their best. Coupled with this is a crisis intervention team that works with the Horry County Police Department. We have 4 crisis intervention team members who are civilians and 1 member who is a team leader. He's a sworn officer and a licensed counselor. And these individuals are on call for patrol officers. They have the portable radios. So when a call comes through and they think, oh, this may be an addiction or mental health issue, not necessarily a law enforcement issue, they can be called out so that they can assist that patrol officer with that call. And if it's really a matter of someone who has addiction and needs service, then the law enforcement officer can clear the call and go on to the next call, and the counselor will assist with treatment referral and discussing options with the individual and the family. They also assist with de-escalation, which is really important. So they provide education and outreach, and since April of this year, they have engaged in 1,746 contacts in the county. This lets you know that this is a really needed program. And in this particular case, this is actually a picture from a newspaper article about an individual who was in crisis. It was an opioid-involved call, and that individual received help from one of our crisis intervention officers, completed treatment, and I received a call a couple of months ago that that individual was just moving into a new apartment and had a job, and they are on their way to recovery and getting back into the routine of having a home, having a job, and they've been very successful. And that's really what we hope for through this program. Also, treatment court expansion. Our treatment court is very, very successful thanks to the efforts of our solicitor. But they were also aware as they worked with individuals that some people have barriers that really prevent them from participating in treatment court. So they might not be able to take advantage of that. If they have housing insecurity, they don't have a permanent address, and you need one in order to participate. A lot of them have transportation needs. I'd love to participate in treatment court, but I can't get there. And so these new individuals, an outreach coordinator, a case manager, and a counselor, are able to provide wraparound services and also do home visits for testing. So we can get the individuals who would really benefit from these programs, but in the past haven't been able to access these programs and allow them to participate and the same options as other individuals. They provide testing and therapeutic counseling services. They have seen a huge increase in program participation since the initiation of these programs. They're up about 40%. And the Next Steps program at the J. Reuben Long Center is is a long-standing program for us and really was begun under Chief Deputy Fox. And again, Next Steps has a long history of success, but it was available historically only to male inmates. And with the opioid funds, they were able to create a program for female inmates, which has proved very successful. They have a dedicated place in the annex where they conduct the recovery programs for individuals in JRL and also the pretrial inmates. And again, with all of these slides, you see how many people, 371 individuals connected to therapeutic counseling services, 337 individuals with a substance use disorder specific release plan. And this program is very highly thought of and was included in the governor's opioid summit, where they received a standing ovation after their presentation for all of the groundbreaking work that they're doing. But again, an incarcerated person can take advantage of that time to participate in a program like this that also helps them with job skills and some of their other needs. So reentry is much easier for these individuals because of that. And then a fifth program that we began was a public safety employee assistance program. And one of the things that we find with our public safety employees is because of the opioid crisis and other job-specific stressors that our public safety officers encounter, that can be a lot. You know, each call that they make is something that the people who they are serving will remember for the rest of their lives. And there's a lot of trauma that they witness. And sometimes they need specialized services. The generalized services that the rest of the employees receive may not be sufficient for them. And so this program provides specialized employee assistance for first responders through peer support. And this is being led by Captain Steve Sampalo in Horry County Fire Rescue, but it really serves all of our public safety units. And we are putting that connective tissue together now to get everyone involved in a overarching peer support program for public safety. We also have a multi-jurisdictional opioid planning grant. Every jurisdiction that receives opioid funding, and in Horry County, that's Horry County itself, City of Myrtle Beach, City of North Myrtle Beach, and City of Conway, can get at least $25,000 or up to $25,000 for planning efforts, and they can do that every 3 years. What we decided to do in partnership with our municipalities was to actually pool our funds so that we can put together a multi-jurisdiction planning grant for how to coordinate all of these initiatives and how to really coordinate on issues that really cross jurisdictional boundaries. And so you'll be hearing more about that later. One thing I wanted to point out, as you saw in the early slide, that $2.9 million has been disbursed so far from the Opioid Fund Board for our current initiatives. What is interesting to me is the indicator of success that I look at as a grants person is to say, okay, how are we doing with our competitive grants? It's not a matter of applying and getting a grant. You're competing with other people for scarce resources when you get a grant. And although we have $2.9 million in the opioid fund board that has been dispersed to us, 3.1 million in addition, has come to us through external grants for support of these programs because of the initial success of these programs. And that's an early indicator to me that we have successful programs that are working and that we can also grow the pie beyond what the SCORE Fund Board has provided us. One thing I really do want to point out right now briefly is the Smart Reentry Grant, which is $1 million over 3 years. That helps address housing needs of individuals who are being released from recovery programs at J. Reuben Long, because housing is sometimes a very big issue for that population. And I wanted to go back really quickly to talk about the multi-jurisdictional opioid response plan. We have been working over 2024 to on a multi-jurisdictional basis to gather input from the larger community to see what the needs are. And we ran some focus groups with lots of different organizations who are impacted by the opioid epidemic to see how we could be working together. And so some of the things that we have found is that we need some more infrastructure, we need some more coordination of local efforts. One thing that we heard was don't stop what you're doing, because these programs like harm reduction and crisis intervention make a difference. And we do have a lack of existing beds for crisis service, detox, inpatient stabilization, long-term recovery. We're going to be working on that. And Randy is also going to be talking with you about next steps for the opioid planning effort. So again, it's been a real pleasure to talk with you today and present some of the wonderful successes our public safety teams have made in this area.
Beth, go ahead.
I have a question. I don't know if we can do this tonight, but you were talking about the meetings you have with these people that have issues, and then it's growing, more people are coming. But then I started thinking, these people, a lot of them, they can't come because of cars. And, we've got a great transportation, RTA, and they have vans now. Maybe they can, they're gonna have a very happy, budget coming out of this new, ride program. Maybe you could work with them to have the van available the days there's meetings, and have, weeklies of people that can go around and pick them up, bring it, and take them home. That would help solve some of the opioid problems. Look into that. I don't know.
I absolutely concur. Transportation is an issue that we hear over and over again. Right. And I'm aware of also some of those that are connected to jobs as well, that get a group of people who work and then move them over to their jobs. We're definitely looking at that, and we will, sir. And the case managers now, when they don't see an available route, they're working with Uber Medical and some other services to provide those rides in the interim. That is absolutely true.
Okay. Um, is there any data that tells us about the incidents that occur? How many of them are Horry County residents versus visitors who are transient?
We're in the process of collecting that. I don't have the breakout today, but that's part of what we're looking at. And then we are also looking at also doing a longitudinal survey of the data to say, okay, this person we helped then, where are they now? And so a couple of our units have started looking at the data in both of those ways.
Yeah, that was my next question is like any idea on what the rate of recidivism is?
We're working on that.
Yeah.
These programs are very new.
Okay.
And so we don't yet have much in the terms of longitudinal data, but we've definitely had the discussion about what we need to do in order to get there. And they're starting to compile the data now.
And then this may be more of a question for Randy, but is there any, has there been any training for our, excuse me, our emergency responders to be able to distinguish between an actual opioid overdose versus other maybe conditions that might look like that? And I'll tell you just from a personal experience I had. I'm diabetic. I had a, I had basically an insulin overdose, for lack of a better word, that left me in a condition where the emergency responders wanted to Narcan me, and my wife had to fight with them because they were insistent that I was overdosing on something. And so I'm just wondering, like, I don't want to see a citizen or, one of our constituents in a situation like I was, where I had an actual medical emergency, be treated as if this were a, opioid overdose or something like that.
So the challenge with that is a lot of that looks the same. The situation you were in versus an overdose does kind of present itself the same. And, they got to take the course of action to make the immediate impact on life safety. So Narcan will be a quick if that were the case. So, yeah, sometimes it's hard to tell, but they do get it. But that initial assessment, they're looking to treat that immediate life-threatening issue first. It's my understanding Narcan would not have any effect on you outside of the opioid reversal. So it's kind of like a chronological step, but that's done rapidly. So, yeah.
Any other questions?
Well, one comment I would just like to add, as we move forward in this process, we will see a greater demand for monies or needs that may not fit the actual ability to get reimbursed from these lawsuit settlements. And it may be that we need to consider in the future some additional funding, this unrestricted type funding in this effort. As we move forward with this community-wide approach, and I think Randy's going to touch on that a little bit in his presentation, there may be some needs there as well.
That's a great point and great questions. And what it takes is it takes what it takes. And these programs are saving lives, and they're saving money for the Horry County government, and then it's saving money for our citizens, our taxpayers, which is ultimately a good goal. And it segues in right with public safety and mental health, Mr. Crawford, and the things that we're working on. All of this works together, and we're going to have to find the money to keep it going, because we're going to have to, because ultimately it's going to save us money. So if there's no other questions, I guess next to the American Rescue.
Thank you so much for your support of the American Rescue Plan Act projects. We wanted to provide you a brief update. You see a lot of these programs in inception, and just like finance presented, we wanted to show you a few completed projects as well and give you a status update. One of our first projects was the Oak Tree Farm housing development, where 21 one and two bedroom rental apartment units in Conway were constructed. That's the picture of the completed construction. And the community serves adults with autism and other developmental disabilities. And you can see the ARPA funding that was provided for that. And those are your ARPA dollars at work currently. Also, with Habitat for Humanity of Horry County, there was a $1.935 thousand dollar or $1,935,000 investment in Habitat Horry, largely which is going to land acquisition. Habitat has been building and filling capacity very quickly, but as you know, the need for affordable housing is acute and remains difficult in this area. And so most of their funding is being used for land acquisition for new neighborhoods. Some of the federal funding that we get, and obviously that we subcontract to Habitat for Humanity for new building construction, has a time limit between when you acquire the land and when people are moving in. And it's very difficult to do neighborhood scale developments with those types of tight timelines. And so what ARPA allowed us to do was to really use two different sources for those timelines so that Habitat could build out over time. Hope's Crossing is almost built out. Many of the infill lots have now been constructed on, and this is really providing new space for new neighborhoods. So with the Sweet Bay Village parcel acquisition, this is going to be 9 new family residences in Conway And the community will primarily serve households at 80% of the area median income and below. And actually, with Sweet Bay Village, they're going to use some of the ARPA funding to provide the water and sewer infrastructure for this development at a discounted price. Also, there was the Freewoods parcel acquisition, which will enable the development of 25 single-family residences. Again, 80% area median income and below. And then moving on to, well, I should mention with the last slide that there was an additional closing that happened on Tuesday with with a parcel in Sockasty. That'll be another another nine individual homes. So since the completion of the ARPA project, here, the Northern System hydraulic improvements, we actually have some follow-on funding for new well development. The ARPA funding for Bucksport Water System provided funding to upgrade lines. That's both delivery, water quality, and pressure in the Dog Bluff area. And we also, after completing this project, which was done with a combination of ARPA, Bucksport Water System, and Rural Infrastructure Authority funding, the new well is going to be put in the northern sector for this particular system. An additional $1 million was received from the Rural Infrastructure Authority in order to support that effort. Also, in the city of Myrtle Beach, we supported Canal Street sanitary sewer force main replacement. And this is an area where we've also had some CDBG investment and certainly a lot of local investment from the city of Myrtle Beach. But this funding allowed them to complete that project. And so also the CDBG subrecipient funding that we have for the city of Myrtle Beach in that area will continue to make investments along that corridor. Additional selected completed projects are shown here. Some of them you also saw in the finance presentations. And for government services, that includes ROD digitization, which is finishing up, bomb squad vehicle, cybersecurity, remote working capability, and facilities technology enhancements in these meeting rooms. In terms of community investments, we have completed a land acquisition for multi-use sports and recreation land. That's a rural civic center. Land for economic development, which is at Ascot Valley. VA Nursing Center land, which is out Old Altman Road off Highway 90. DHEC South Strand, kudos to John Barnhill for the work that he did there for conversion of that facility. And the RJ Corman Rail Line extension, which really adds to the work that was done through the Tiger grant that we got through the Department of Transportation. Projects in progress include Grand Strand Water and Sewer, and actually that project is for a new sewer transmission pump station to divert flow from Conway Wastewater Treatment Plant to Bucksport Wastewater Treatment Plant. The pump station will be completed by May of next year, and the force main will be completed by September of next year. For the city of North Myrtle Beach, that's a water line extension to Little River Neck Road in Jack Circle and Harrelson Road to provide clean potable water to that community that currently doesn't have access. They're currently in the permitting phase. In Surfside Beach, you may have seen the newspaper articles about drainage system installations at 2nd Avenue, 11th Avenue North, and 14th Avenue North, and the installation of 65 catch basins. That work is ongoing, and that's not only supported by our ARPA funds, but also some of the state ARPA funds that are flowing through the South Carolina Office of Resilience. In Loris, there is a state ARPA investment along with our ARPA investment for replacing old water lines along Main and Walnut Street sections of downtown Loris. And the Council of Aging funding actually benefited the senior centers at Carolina Forest, Mount Vernon, Burgess, South Strand, Aner, Bucksport, Grand Strand, Loris, and North Strand. So even if it's installation of an ice maker, all of those centers got something. There is still work to do in terms of identified needs, and Mr. Spivey referenced that in his opening remarks. One of the things we've been hearing about is the need for additional sheltering space for our community. One development is it's not under construction, but it is in the planning stages, is for New Directions. They're in the process of developing a pro forma budget for a larger women's center. Their current facility serves primarily men, and there's a need for a larger women's center, administrative offices, and also the consolidation of the food services that they provide to a larger community. And so we would like to suggest a set aside of $750,000 for that effort as part of our ask. And our preference would be that it's directed to the specific need of capacity expansion for the women's shelter. And the Compass community that's located out Highway 9 in the northern part of Horry County is also in the planning stages for expansion of capacity through a new capital project. And $330,000 has been committed by the state for this new build out. And we would like to suggest the set aside of $250,000 to support that effort. So we do have the additional capacity we need for housing insecure individuals. The last thing I'd like to mention is a long-standing plan to assist the Race Path community that is located roughly in Myrtle Beach, but is part of the county. Um, there are multiple phases of this activity that have been planned over time. Phase one included some improvements to Race Path Street, both the roadway and the drainage system. And actually, that was a CDBG investment along with Rural Infrastructure Authority investment. And we have completed the plans for phase two. We completed them about the time we were coming out of COVID. And so, although we had set aside enough money initially, the inflation in construction costs was really a shock to the system in terms of this project. Um, the project really came in at twice the level that was otherwise predicted. And we bid three times, and each time, first two were unsuccessful. The third, we had one bidder, and it was really at twice the level we had set aside. There's a limit to the amount of entitlement funds that I can carry over because of spend down requirements. And so we would ask that a contribution of ARPA interest funds be considered in the amount of $750,000 to allow us to move forward with this project. Again, providing a sewer service extension, relocation of water lines, and road resurfacing and drainage. And again, the services would be stubbed out so that future expansions could also take place. And I'd like to thank Andy Markunis for his assistance with that effort. Thank you.
Just a comment and a praise. A couple months ago, we got an invitation to attend the ribbon cutting for SOS's new apartments, and it was on a Friday night, and they said, please come. And just happened to be talking to the chairman when I got the call and asked him to come with me, and we got to go to a party at those apartments that you saw a few minutes ago, and it was awesome to see young people who have challenges flourishing in beautiful apartments, a great community. And if you ever get a chance, it's over behind the Taco Bell and the old Pepsi plant. And those people are so welcoming. They're so appreciative. And I am thankful to have that in Conway. It's a project that's been underway, working on it for probably 10 years. But for folks to not be incarcerated in their room or somewhere they don't want to be, or with someone that doesn't want them to be there, for them to be flourishing, just very exceptional. Thank you for that. And just wanted to let you know, good stuff. Appreciate your work.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for all the great work you do, all the staff, everybody involved in that. And that segues perfectly in with the public safety.
Morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here today. So we're going to go over Public Safety Division, and I'm going to hit the highlights. In fact, as you can imagine, a number of enhancements already submitted into the budget request, and we'll get into a lot of those later in the process, not today. But there's a few highlights I want to make today to bring your attention to a few good things as well. So make sure I get this to work. Hey. So let's start with the police department. I'm not going to read the whole slide to you, but I can tell you that our call volume continues to increase all across the spectrum in public safety as well as everybody else in our departments. A couple of points I want to make out, though, if you look at the narcotics and gang stats, especially the firearms that have been seized, last year at 193 and this year at 164 so far. So we're seeing a huge impact in those folks being out there now. And the number of drug seized, the kilos of drug seized, luckily that's down a little bit thus far this year. It's not quite halfway. Maybe that's a good sign that the impact is already happening, having these folks out there doing their job and doing a great job. I want to draw attention to the SWAT. 123 calls in physical 24 and 57 so far. So if you recall a year or so ago, we started looking at, you all gave us positions to staff that with some full-time folks, and the call volume continues to increase in that respect from the SWAT team as well as the other special operations teams. So in the years to come, hopefully maybe not too many more years to come, we will be looking at how we're going to handle these types of additional special ops teams as well. Because once again, officers come off the street if they're working that day to respond to these special ops calls. So that's a big issue moving forward as we continue to grow. We've hired 69 SWAT officers so far, and we've hired 12 civilians. So a couple of key additional points. Our police chief, Chris Lionheart, was appointed in October, doing a fantastic job. And one of the key focuses for the police department, as well as everything else they're doing, is preparation for the 5th precinct to come online this fall. I will say, within the police department, you'll hear me say this in several of these departments today, we're at a point we need to consider hiring support staff to support the officers, the detectives, and the other department or positions in that police department as well as the other departments. So you'll see more on that in the coming months as we go through the budget. One thing I do want to say, when we look at particular, right now we have 48 vacancies within the police department. 31 of those are officers patrol. So we're still filling those gaps. Some of that was additional ones we've had to bring on the 5th precinct. So I don't have a slide on this one, but just a point to make. Yes, sir.
Could you go back to the other slide?
Maybe.
The other way. Put it in reverse.
He's smarter than the presentation.
There we go. All right, I may have missed something here, but on your narcotics and gang stats.
Yes, sir.
Are those arrests for FY24 for the entire year?
In the blue, yes, sir.
So we're up like 60%?
Yes, sir. So the gang, in particular, the gang unit just came online a few months ago. And the narcotics has been along and along. So adding the gang unit to this has already made a huge impact.
And the same for firearms? I mean,
correct. Yeah. And it's not just those. We have the street crimes unit, the other special units that we have involved, but in particular for these two, those stats. Yes.
But Gary, it looks like it's sort of an artificially inflated number because we added the gang unit to the narcotics unit.
That's
right?
correct.
The FY24 numbers are only reflective of narcotics arrests, right?
Yes. Yeah, thank you, sir. Yeah. All right. Animal Care Center. So obviously, we run a really good animal care center, a lot of intakes, but unfortunately, we are at 100% capacity and have been that way for a number of years. So it does impact the ability to do additional intakes. Our team does a great job in trying to move our cats and dogs through the shelter as quickly as possible to get them adopted. But we still are struggling. So you've seen and heard about the expansion to the Animal Care Center. We need to continue to push for that and move forward with that. But as this is a direct relationship to as the population grows, so do the cats and dogs. And so it's just a continuing of our impacts that we have with our growth. Fire and rescue, call volume there continues to increase. Update from this slide, when this slide was made, it was 72,000. Right now we're at 78,814. So this slide's not that old either. So we're seeing tremendous increases in the call volume across public safety, but fire rescue as well. Projected to be above 83,000 calls for the end of the fiscal year for fire rescue. Some things we need to consider moving forward again is adding additional EMS units to manage this call volume, as well as additional staffing for engines, ladders, and our specialty teams in fire rescue. We'll hear more about that through the budget process. Right, let's go to 911 Center. These numbers are astounding. When you look at that top number, total number of incoming calls, 457,000 are being handled. This is on FY24. Text, if you recall a few years ago, we implemented the text to 911 feature. So 3,400 people have done that. Dispatched calls for all the different agencies that they dispatched for, 317,000 calls have been dispatched. And when you think how many times someone has pressed the button to talk on the radio, 11 million, almost 12 million of those talking transactions went across the air in FY24. 22 call radio transmissions per minute. Those are astounding numbers, and that's only growing, And we need to continue, as we bring the 5th precinct on board, we need to consider adding additional dispatching assistance there in that department as well. Sheriff's Office, once again with the growth, and a couple of interesting points on here, looking at the number of special operations. Look down that slide, internet crimes against children, 229 cases have been brought for that. Also, when you look at the number of field operations and civil papers, court papers, those are also direct relationship to the increased growth that we have throughout the county. So one of the things we keep moving forward with the Sheriff's Office is we will need to consider additional deputies for the 5th precinct. And I will mention that with the detention center, our space needs assessment is underway, and it was brought up earlier in the presentation on the capital plan. So we'll be able to bring back to you in the next little while some numbers to look at it in terms of what we need to do at the J. Reuben Long Detention Center. Well, at the precinct, it's more than just the police department. Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Yes, sir. Yeah. Okay, you saw a little brief on this on the capital plan, but I just want to thank everybody for helping us to get the expansion for the coroner's office, the coolers. We're still looking forward in the future with how we're going to work with the coroner's office for the bigger picture. And the future capital improvement plans, we have some ideas of what we need to do there. Caseload continues to increase. Obviously, it's a direct impact on the growth of the county. So we do need to consider they need some help on the support side as well. There's a lot of paperwork and a lot of issues that go along with the coroner's office. And we've not grown that in a long time. So you'll see more about that in the future. So any questions on those particular departments? You'll see other discussion and enhancements as we move forward as well.
I do have a question, actually, going back to the Sheriff's Department. As it pertains to the Central Coast Complex, why couldn't we simply just redeploy the personnel that we had on 21st Avenue to that Central Coast Complex? Why would we need to increase the amount of staff?
We will, but there's also going to be an increase in the number of courtrooms there as well. Yeah. All right, so before I move into the mental health aspect, any questions you have for me? Yes, sir?
Maybe just more of a compliment. The numbers that we saw a few minutes ago that Councilmember Loftus was referring to are alarming. And I think our first operation as public officials is public safety. And I'm just hoping that we're going to have a lot of requests for more drug enforcement. I mean, more gang enforcement. We'll never eliminate crime, but if we make it really inconvenient, they'll go somewhere else. So I appreciate the great effort. The numbers are waking us up. And if you read the news, if you look at any kind of media, the gangs are coming from other places. And if we can make it really inconvenient for them to do business here, they'll go somewhere else. And they need to go somewhere else.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
On your list there of various types of arrests or calls, do you have a number for the amount of domestic dispute calls that we handle?
Yeah, we track that. I didn't think about having that number available for us, but we can get it back to you. But there's a good number.
You think it's in the tens of thousands? Not that high?
It's higher than it needs to be, I will tell you that.
Right.
But I really don't know. I'd be telling you something I'm not quite sure of, but we can get it for you for sure.
And I would think the last 2 years, given what we've got in the economy and issues with families and stress, the numbers had to grow significantly.
And just listening to the radio every day, I hear a lot of calls that go out for that, along with a lot of other mental health issues and those issues as well. So, it's a good number, though. It's a high number. Yes, sir. Okay. All right. Let's talk a little bit about the program we put together with the mental health. And back when the chairman charged us with that responsibility, I guess almost 2 years ago now, and the committee we put together, chaired by Mr. Crawford, we have really made great strides, I feel, in this effort. You saw a super presentation from Beth in more of the details of what those numbers are. So this is kind of a rehash of that, but I want to look at it in a different way, 2 different points. When you look at all the numbers of individuals that's on that page that have been impacted or helped, it's over 5,200 people in the last year. That's about 14 people a day. So, Mr. Massarelli, it kind of goes back to what you just asked too. These issues are real. These issues are impacting our folks every single day across this county. Probably one of the biggest positive investments and initiatives that we've taken on is to deal with this issue as well as we are, but there's a lot of work to do. And Mr. Barry Spivey mentioned it perfectly earlier on. It is going to take more investment as we move forward to keep these numbers, the impacts that we're seeing and the benefits we're making on people's lives to continue to go as part of public safety. So the other important note to take, as you saw with the presentations, this problem being within public safety, it's also being addressed across different departments of public safety working together. Not one department is taking the lead to do it all. So it's important that we take that effort and move that forward into what Ms. Tranker was talking about with the multi-jurisdictional approach. So we have our strategic plan that the consulting firm put together. And I'll be taking that plan, working with each of the jurisdictions that were part of it and others to build now a framework using that strategic plan to move forward to address how we're going to implement those things within the plan, how we're going to continue to provide the best service that we can efficiently and mainly without duplication of effort across all of our partners. But the one key denominator or the one key flaw, if you will, is all the work we're doing on the front end and getting folks into what treatment facilities we can. We do not have a long-term treatment facility in our region. And we need the state's help to do that. That needs to be a priority as we move forward collectively. So we don't see what Mr. DeSabato was talking about in the long term, the repeats. People can actually get through the short-term treatment or get into the longer-term facilities and get the help that they need. So we'll be talking more about that effort as we move forward as well. But that is kind of like the icing on the cake if we're going to make a big difference in this, in our community in the long term. But I'm very proud of the work all of our group of nonprofits are doing, all of our public safety, not just Horry County, but all the municipalities are working together. And but we will be taking the effort as an umbrella to push this forward in a strategic way, in a positive way, but with the support and assistance of our municipality partners and nonprofit partners as well. So, one couple of things to wrap up with public safety. If you do recall, we have the public safety facility underway as far as design. Phase one was a driving track and the expansion of indoor care center. And then we do have the spatial needs assessment underway for the actual building itself for the public safety training facility. And the last thing I want to kind of wrap up with is the priorities as I see it from public safety. So far, moving into the budget process is, getting the 5th precinct up and running as efficiently and quickly as possible, finishing out the hiring process for that. But we got to increase our support staff, not only in police department, but all the departments in public safety, matter of fact, all across all of our divisions and county departments. We've got to continue to address staffing levels so that we can at least maintain service, if not try to bring additional folks to make our services even better. And then finally, I know you've heard it, Mr. Barry Spivey talked about it, is compensation. We've got to look at compensation. We've got to look at remaining competitive. We've got to look at so we can retain our folks and not have to keep starting over. And the more I know on the police department side, the better we are at getting folks in here that are already certified, then they get in the field a lot quicker. And if we can offer that appropriate compensation to do that, that's what we're asking to do, keep moving forward so we don't go backwards. All right. Any questions on public safety?
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Excellent. Appreciate you and your staff and everything that you do. This will be a good time for us to take the morning break. Then we'll come back and listen to Jason Thompson tell us all about the RIDE program and the wetland mitigation. We'll come back at 10:45. Short break. We'll get back to our strategic issues. And we're covering a lot of ground today. We're going to try to get as much done before the scheduled lunch break as possible. The next up will be from Jason Thompson with the ride update. That's also going to include, I think it's going to include a wetland mitigation update, which is what I understand is fantastic news for the county. And so we'll move forward. Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Chairman. Quick update on the entire ride program this morning is where I'm going. What you see on the screen is the Ride 3 program, currently in effect, and it will expire on April 30th of 2025. The map shows all of the projects that we are covering, have covered, and will cover. This information is also on the website for those out in the general public. Please go out and look at the website so that you can see what we are doing. Ride 3, what have we done? We have completed dirt road paving for groups 1 and 2, approximately 35 roads with 50 miles paved. Resurfacing, we've worked with the municipalities for approximately 30 miles of road to be resurfaced, and the county has resurfaced approximately 57 miles. We have completed Palmetto Point Boulevard extension, which provided alternate accesses for the Palmetto Point community from 17 and 707. Carolina Forest Boulevard was widened from 2 lanes to 4 lanes with pedestrian facilities on both sides. Middle Ridge Avenue and Postal Way extension, frontage roads along 501. They are currently in place and operating while the US 501 expansion continues. Under construction, Group 3 dirt roads, 25 miles. First 2 roads should go out early 2025. US widening in Loris, that's a 3-lane section going out of North Loris. SC9 widening, 3-lane section out towards 66. Fred Nash Boulevard, that's going to be the reconnection at the Fantasy Harbor interchange. US 701 widening in North Conway. As you leave out of Conway, we're starting the process now with a clearing and grubbing contract. 501 realignment downtown Myrtle Beach, and US 501 mainline widening from Garner-Lacey up to 544. What do we have upcoming? Group 4 dirt road pavings will be spring of 25. US 17 business in Surfside, March of 2025. Forest Brook Road, April 2025. Conway Perimeter, September of 2025. And Carolina Bays Parkway North, still in permitting, but we expect to have some public information meetings during 2025. Bunch of numbers before you. Kind of a quick summary. First column is the project name. Second column was the referendum amount, the budget amount adjusted, and then expenditures to date.
Why was there such a large discrepancy on the Middle Ridge between locals and the
Hold on, let me back us up. Which one, Councilman? I'm sorry. Third one down is Middle Ridge. Started out as a very simple project. We thought internally that most of the right-of-way was going to be donated, as was Postal Way on the opposite side, and right-of-way did not get donated, and it continues to cost us today as we go through the condemnation cases. So that was the major cost. Once again, this hit after COVID, so inflation, as far as the actual project cost itself was elevated, and with those two numbers, you see what we have, way above budget. We good? Okay. All right, moving forward, 592 million was what was on the referendum. The adjusted budgets as of today, somewhere around 853.5 million, and we have spent about 237 million. So we are moving forward, spending money. We are now into the process where a lot of the construction projects are underway, and that's where the majority of our expenditures occur.
Excuse me.
Hold on.
Hello? Go back.
Go back. Yes, sir.
31 extension. That's up to the North Carolina line, correct? Highway 31 extension
Correct,
up the North Carolina line.
correct.
Where does it go from there?
That is a joint project with North Carolina DOT, SCDOT, currently being permitted as a joint project. Once the permit is signed by FHWA, it will be a separated project, and that's what I alluded to. The route, we will tie down somewhere around the North Carolina line for our portion, South Carolina portion, and then North Carolina will pick up their portion.
But yeah, I understand that, but where is North Carolina in their process? I
Far
heard
as-
it wasn't even on their 10-year plan.
Far as the process, once we get the joint permit from FHWA signed, it's going to split, so it's not going to matter. They do have funding issues. You are aware of that through the GSAS meetings that we've been involved with, the updates where they come down and provide us. They have funding issues. They cannot fund the entire corridor as is shown on the public information for the proposed routes. Not sure if their legislators are continuing to seek funding or they're working on the very short section where we tie down at the state line to handle the traffic that comes off of 31 heading into North Carolina.
I don't feel real good about it.
So they don't have a plan, basically, is what you're saying?
We can't control their monies.
Understood.
Ride 3 monies have to be spent in Horry County, and that's what this 125 million, which was a partial funding project to start with, that's where we're at. And we will make our commitment to take it to the state line, and then North Carolina's got to come to the pot with their money to pick up and go north.
This may be a legal question, but I understand that that was part of our Ride 3 ballot referendum, but if there's no plan for North Carolina to meet their obligations, then can we redeploy those funds into other infrastructure projects, or should we not even go down that road?
We shouldn't go down that road.
Okay.
I think-
Once we deploy ours and move it towards that line, it's going to put pressure on the North Carolina legislature to allocate that money because it is part of the joint group project.
Mr. Chairman, are we going to collect some to finish Ride 3?
That's an excellent question, and Ride 4, project number 1, actually covers any underrun or shortfalls that Ride 3 had. So when Ride 4 passed, Ride 3 was a complete project. All 20 projects would be completed and funded based on Ride 4. Go ahead.
You kind of skirted around the question.
I answered your
The
question.
revenues right now are showing that we'll be close,
Close.
but we won't know for sure until we actually bid out Highway 31 Extension North.
And as I stated, the 125 shown here and on the referendum was a partial funding. 7.5, 8 years ago, it was underfunded by 60 million on our estimates. So the project at that time was about 185 million. It's escalated to somewhere around 210 today. And I estimate it and project that it will continue to rise before we actually get to construction.
I don't want to belabor this, but that extension would run into Brunswick County, North Carolina?
Right at the state line, somewhere around Hickman's Crossroads.
Okay, so have we engaged any conversation with Brunswick County staff to see where they are locally in trying to get their state legislature engaged in picking up this road project? And if we haven't, can we?
We have not to date. Our communications have been with North Carolina DOT and our consultant that's managing this project jointly. We can initiate that, but
Well, I mean, I think it would, I would imagine that having local government's engagement in this particular issue might help in trying to get their state legislature and their state government agency like the DOT involved in making this more of a priority.
we'll reach out to them and find out what their position is on it.
And has our DOT been in, like, where is our state DOT in regards to trying to exert whatever influence they can on?
I do know our DOT and SCDOT and NCDOT have both been in conversations and are somewhat equally yoked at this point. It's really a matter of funding and priority at the state level for North Carolina.
That is a
Priority being the important word there, I would think.
It's a matter of priority. Mr. Sir.
Just to expand on what Dennis was mentioning, would it behoove us, since we do have RIDE 4 that has passed, to take a similar path with the 31 extension that we are taking with 73, in that it's still a priority for us, but do we shift those funds maybe down the list a little bit until DOT in North Carolina comes up with their funds to meet the road?
We're already almost at the end of the list. This is a RIDE 3 program, right?
That's correct. It's number 19 on the list.
Yeah.
Well, it's funneling into RIDE 4, though, is what Jason just said. If there is overruns, it's going to funnel into RIDE 4. My question is, it's a partial funding, and does it shift on the list a little bit until we have North Carolina funding? Does it behoove us to push other priorities up the list when they can be completed in its entirety?
Yeah, I think that's what I was sort of alluding to earlier, not redeployment, but yeah.
The questions for staff.
I think what we could do, we could delay that, but there are some issues on Highway 57 that even if we only complete the portion within South Carolina, as it attaches to that state line area on 57, and I'm not sure what the North Carolina number is. So as it attaches there at Hickman's Crossroads, it will provide some relief for the Highway 57 corridor, which is in desperate need of that. I think if Ms. Nukes was here, she would confirm that for sure. So there's some benefit, even though it may not be the full benefit, there is a substantial benefit that will come when that project is opened up.
Well, there's going to be a substantial benefit, I guess, with all these projects, right?
Right.
On
Yes,
RIDE
sir.
3 and RIDE 4. I guess the question is there a project maybe a little farther down the list that would be a higher priority if we can't complete this in its entirety? And I don't know if that answer needs to be answered today, but I guess there's something to think about. I guess the question is there potential to shift these projects around if, like I-73, I think the intention of this council was not to build the road to the county line until we had substantial commitments from the state and the federal government. Is this a project that's kind of in the same crux? And can that be shifted around if we don't feel like other governmental entities are meeting their obligations that were initially committed to us when this passed? Not saying that we get rid of the project altogether, but we just shift, because there are other priorities out there right now. Whether that be highway.
We still have, I guess the best answer right now is we still have a little bit of time to find out exactly where North Carolina may be when we get to the point of construction. But it's an interesting conversation. I think we can't, this is the second to the last project. The very last project on RIDE 3 is the completion of the last package of dirt roads. So there's really nothing that we can move up and that we can advance in lieu of this project. I think we'll just continue to seek the completion of it at the right time. That's maybe the best way.
That's kind of what I was getting at. I mean, we're here as elected officials trying to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars and making sure it's being spent wisely at the correct time. And the collections of this transportation tax are what they are every year.
Right.
And we're banking that money, and we just need to spend it at the highest priority that we're getting it at. And building the road doesn't necessarily incentivize North Carolina to do their part either. Thank you.
And along those terms, Council, we do have a commitment, and the process where we're at now with the permitting to continue, I would not be encouraged if we held the clutch down and kind of coasted a few minutes. With the permitting process, as we've seen on some of these other larger projects, I think we need to continue pressing forward to make sure we get our permits and be ready on the permit and design side to hit the construction button as soon as we can.
I think 100%. I mean, the permit's critical. I think it's the question when you let the project, right?
Correct. And we're still a little ways out by the time we get to the final decision on the EIS and then the ROD, which should come next year. At that point, then yes, we've got to make a decision, and there's some processes that will need to happen. But I think we need to keep pushing forward as we are now If we slow up, then it may give the wrong opinion that we're pausing ride 3 before we get ride 4 started. So understand your concern on getting the projects rolling and keeping them moving, and that's where we're trying to keep it moving. Even though there's a difference between North Carolina and South Carolina, I think it's going to be a workable decision sooner than later.
Thank you.
Okay? All right, where are we at and where we're going? Ride 4. November 2024 passed with 56.78% support. The tax will continue on May 1st of 2025 for 25 years or $6.6 billion. Largest program in the state of South Carolina. So we have a task before us to not only uphold our entered agreement, but to make it happen for the constituents of Horry County. So we certainly look forward to the challenges that are coming. What are we doing? There's some intergovernmental agencies, IGAs, discussions already happening between DOT, SCDOT, Coast RTA, and municipalities. So we're starting that thinking process on what needs to happen as of May 1st next year. How are the projects delivered? Some of the larger ones down to the smaller ones. What methodology do we use? How do we get the projects out quicker, better, and cheaper? More cost effective. Dirt road paving, are we using the correct grouping size? Ride 3 was 25 miles per each group. Ride 4, is it 25 miles? Is it 10 miles? All of those talks, discussions are happening now. The referendum and physical constraints determine the project timings. That all goes back to when do we have that money in the bank and can we pay as we go? There's a certain level of collections, forecasted amount, where do each one of them fall? That's a very fine line for balancing. Councilman, see you later.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about, my understanding is that there was some state infrastructure bank funding to the tune of about $500 million, maybe a little less, that was line items for projects in Charleston, Beaufort County. However, the ballot referendums in Charleston County failed, and that money has been pulled back from the infrastructure bank for those projects, meaning that there is now $500 million of funding available for shovel-ready projects, of which Horry County is the only county that has shovel-ready projects because we just put a $6 billion infrastructure program together.
Absolutely. Couple pieces of the puzzle we're working on. We still have some outstanding right-of-way issues tied in to a previously funded SIP project, which was the 31 Southern Extension 707 Wide. We're working through those processes now to close that project out, to get it off their books, to make us more presentable when it comes to going back and asking for additional funds. You are correct. What I heard, you heard the same thing. Approximately $500 million got pulled back. I think there's some conversation happening now between Horry County and the SIB and some key leaders to see how and when can we get back in, what process does it take, and when does that need to happen. Yield to Mr. Spivey, maybe?
Yes, we have multiple discussions ongoing with the Secretary directly, as well as the administration there at the SIB, our own delegation, our transportation representative, Mr. Tony Cox, and our consultants throughout that services here in the state to try to put together a plan that we can, with perhaps York County and Dorchester County, bring a new program for which new applications can be made in a match type arrangement. And we have the ability to match where others do not.
I want to implore our state delegation right now to come together as a group and put aside any petty squabbles that they have amongst themselves and work together to try as hard as they can to get some of the state infrastructure bank funding for these road projects. We and our constituents that they also serve have put more skin in the game than we ever have before.
Yes, sir.
And we are in a position now where we could do something so transformative, but we need their help to do it. And it's important that they understand that and that they work together to try and accomplish that. We've done our part. It is now time for them to do theirs.
It's the perfect opportunity.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Sounds like a resolution for our next meeting.
All right. Moving forward, transparency is going to be a key point on Ride 4 and getting information pushed out to the public. So we're working with IT internally, PIO office, website, social media, some quarterly outreaches, some annual presentations. A lot of information needs to be passed forward, not only for Ride 4, but also Ride 3. So that's where we're kind of focusing our efforts at this point. Wetland Bank update. The Independent Republic Heritage Preserve Wetland Mitigation Bank. As of this slide, when I put it in here, I changed one word. It has been finalized. I am pleased to present to you today that we have been approved. So as of November 25th, 2024, we do have the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers approval for our wetland bank located on International Drive. Very long task that I started on about 6.5 years ago. So it was one that I wanted to complete before I left here. So very pleased to announce that piece of the puzzle. Sir?
No, you're not.
January 2nd, I can, yes, sir.
No, we don't allow that.
So, very, very pleased to announce that. We are continuing to do uplift. We bought a mulcher to go ahead and install all of the fire breaks necessary for the next piece of the puzzle. We have 3 or 4 items that we've got to submit to the Army Corps over the next couple of weeks to get what is titled the initial release. Even though we have an approved permit, we don't have any wetland credits as of today. But with a few more pieces of the puzzle, we will, and then we will actually start the uplifting process, which will be from now to 10 years out, and will be a continuation of the property. So that's where Horry County government, our internal employees, are out there working hard to make sure that happens. And as a couple of the other presentations have mentioned this morning, where are we at as far as staffing? Council approved several slots for the FY25 budget. Those are noted with stars or asterisks. Currently have 3 positions on the board being advertised, trying to bring people in, onboard them to get us up and running a little more. And what you see before you here is the layout of the chart for what I think it's going to take to make the RIDE program successful. So we are basically presenting 26 total slots here over the next FY26, 27, and 28 years. As you will see, we added one additional slot that was a paralegal to support a senior attorney for next year. We are at the point in the process now where we are dealing with condemnation cases almost on a weekly basis. And we need support from the legal office on that piece of the puzzle. Not only building the roads, but getting to the point where we can. So that was one additional slot over the 25 that have been previously discussed. And along with staffing comes the challenge of where do they sit and where do they operate out of. So we were looking, building-wise, we need office space. That's something that we'll be coming back to you shortly to try and get a facility in order for these staff members to occupy so that they can perform their duties. Chairman?
Yes, sir. I've been talking with some of the council members and some of the staff members and with you. We want to explore the possibility of Horry County doing this. It's our money. We'd like to spend it for our people and keep it all here. Hire whoever we need, put them wherever we need to put them, and move forward with it. That way, the project, the attention would not be divided between the upstate and the lower state. It would just be right here.
Horry County money, hiring Horry County people to build Horry County roads and bridges. Did I get that right?
Well, we would expect that anyhow.
Well, what we're doing is DOT is calling the shots. They get the money. They make the contracts. We do some contracts. We do some of it. That's what we did with Ride 3. But what I'm saying, and then when DOT is doing a project, it's the South Carolina Department of Transportation. They're dealing with projects all over the place. And if we had a Horry County equivalent, where we have experts, we have some of the best engineers in the world right here in Conway, and we could hire the people we need to hire. We could focus our attention on getting these Horry County jobs, and we wouldn't have to go in on one day and talk about a road in Charleston or a road in Greenville. All of our roads will be right here.
That makes good sense. Are we doing it?
Well, that's what we want to try to, I think we've got some drawbacks and some limitations, but we wanted, council wants the staff to know that that's what we're interested in doing. It may not be possible, but we want to make sure you know that that's what we're interested in.
Yes, sir. We've looked at that. We've started, based on the conversations we've already had, we've looked at that a little bit. I think what we should do in concert with that is to, as we move forward, to find that right balance. Maybe we do some of the more interesting projects here and some of the more perfunctory issues we may let DOT handle. But I think we can find a balance to that based on available staffing and our ability to bring on these folks. I think we'd be glad to do that.
That would be wonderful. I think that that's a win-win for Horry County.
Yes, sir.
Well, you would be using the same staff we got now. You'd be getting a building, new staff in there, right? They would work for Horry County.
Yes, sir.
You're not taxing our staff that we currently have. You're bringing in the experts. Is that what you're thinking?
It will be yes, sir. We would have to have more staff, obviously, and it would be substantially more than this, probably double or triple more than this. But
In the long run, you save money and speed it up.
there's a balance. We've got to be able to fund it, obviously. So being able to bring, there's two challenges: is obviously the permitting, but the balance that we've got to strike with the revenue that we generate. We don't want to do it too early. We can't. This whole program is a pay-as-you-go program, with the possible exception of Highway 22 and maybe the river crossing here in Conway. So we've got to balance that desire to get it today versus the ability to fund it. So as we move forward, we're going to accelerate everything that we can so that we can spend $1 when we should spend $1. We don't want to be delayed, obviously. So we're going to have to find it. It's like we do with most everything. It's a balance of the needs. So yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Sir.
Yes, sir.
Real quickly, just to build on what I think the chairman was expressing, I think it's an opportunity. If we bond this thing out, we have the cash flow to invest in people moving to Horry County, engineers, the people that we want to move here, people that will have a great income, people that will contribute to our community, instead of hiring a traffic engineer, instead of hiring a consulting firm from Arkansas. Let's let local folks do this stuff instead of having to travel away. Let's quit hiring foreigners. Let's have people let's bring them here. We have the capability, we have the money. That's what I interpret from this. Thank you.
Horry County money for Horry County people.
There is an anticipation that there would be an element of bonding. However, as Mr. Gilreath mentioned, it's focused on those larger projects, and probably it's going to follow their timeline, so it may not be to year 10 or 8 to 10 before we actually get into the situation where we would need to. So it is down the line in terms of the plan overall.
So probably in the next few months, probably I and our committee, or maybe the council, if y'all wish, maybe we can lay out in front of you and the public what we anticipate the schedule to be. Overall, we're going to build probably 80% of these roads within the first 15 years. the typical development process for design permitting, right-of-way acquisition, clearing, utility relocations, and construction, that is on a small intersection project, that's 6 to 7 years. Um, on these larger projects, on almost any project, it's almost always going to be in that same range, maybe add a couple of years for the duration of construction. But the permitting process is onerous, to put it mildly. So I think we've got to work on finding that balance. We can't do everything in year one, and we don't want to wait to year 30, obviously, or year 25. So it's going to be finding that balance. But it is also going to be driven a lot by things that are outside of our control when we go for permitting at the Army Corps, and when we go to the state, and when we go to DHEC or DES now. So
On the cell project, don't we spent 50 million on it already, right?
we spend a lot of money on it.
Already engineered and permitted?
It is well advanced. It is not the final designs. Sure, they are not done. We haven't selected the final alignment that will be coming in the next 12 to 18 months. We are in the final EIS, the environmental impact study. It is being conducted right now. We just entered into that a couple of months ago. So it is in its advanced stages. The hardest part of these big projects is actually getting the permits. The construction's, it's sad to say, is the easiest part. So we're also looking at some ways that we can maybe fold into that EIS the Conway River crossing, because it's providing benefits to a similar area. It is a new project that wasn't considered during the development of the Highway 22 extension EIS. So we're trying to fold that in as is best and as legal. So when we go to the Corps to get the permit, that we're putting up a complete project. So, yes.
Yes, sir. I was just going to ask Mr. Allen if he and Bill could put this on their next INR meeting, and maybe we can do updates as we have INR meetings periodically, quarterly, or however they see fit.
And I love that funding, Horry County funding for Horry County people. Let's not forget about our local contractors, our small business owners, and our certified DBE owners. Because as we enrich our local business owners, we enrich ourselves, and we enrich Horry County. Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Hey, everybody, good morning still morning. I think this is an update to a similar presentation I did last year ago. Mr. Howard's been asking about the condition of our paved road network. We take new subdivisions in all the time, and I guess the main issues are that we're always going to have growth in Horry County. Our paved network grows in not just subdivisions, but also through my projects, and not in our dirt road paving projects, and not just dirt road paving projects, but also projects like Postal Way Extension, like Mill Ridge Avenue. We're getting new alignments of roads. Palmetto Point Boulevard is another one that's a new county road. So, it's big picture. I just want to give you an overview of how our network continues to grow, how our cost inflation continues to also grow, and revenue continues to grow. The biggest issue is going to be how inflation continues to outpace our revenue growth. But again, the big picture, we're looking at Ride 4 right now as what has bought us some more time, and I'll show you why that is here in a minute. So I think all you have this information. Try not to read the slides verbatim here, but basically we do take new roads in 30 miles a year on average. It's a wide variance year to year. Roads that we're resurfacing now, again, most of our network is our paved road network. That threshold was crossed about 10 years ago or so, not quite that many years ago, but we have over or close to 1,100 miles of centerline miles of paved roads right now. And like I said, the amount that grows year to year does vary. And this kind of shows where we are with our subdivisions. So each little bar on that graph shows how many miles of new subdivisions. It's always a question we get, from at INR committee meetings monthly. And you can see it's a wide variance. I know it's hard to see the small numbers. I tried to make it a little bigger. At the far left is 2002. The far right is where we were last fiscal year that ended ended this past July, or ended this past June into July. And you can see the peaks and the valleys. Obviously, the peak in '08 was basically the 2-3 year lag from the boom we had in the mid 2000s. And those are the roads we're resurfacing now. I mean, it's about 20 years, give or take, maybe 25 years. I know my neighborhood was resurfaced this year, and my road where I live was built before I got here back in the late 90s, early 2000s. So roads are being built, and that was under, too much in the weeds here, but that was under our old standards, which were not as robust as our new current standards, where we actually have 2 lifts of asphalt, if you will, on most of our residential roads. My road I thought was in decent shape. It was over 25 years old. So our network lasts a while. So basically what we're doing now is we're planning for resurfacing roads that we're taking in now will need to be resurfaced for another 20 to 25 years. So this just shows the variability of that. And just to go through kind of where we are with the money and why Ride 4 is such a boost to what our program is going to be and how that helps us out. This shows where we were last year, current year, and looking forward. So basically last year we had about $24 million in revenue, and a lot of that was interest income because of the lawsuit. We continue to bank money up. We have a big amount of interest that we're getting that we didn't get previously, so that's helped us out as well. One of the big things with Ride 4 is there's a Coast RTA line item that currently we pay them close to $3 million a year out of our road maintenance fee, the $50 fee that all of us pay for each of our registered vehicles in the county. Payments to cities will still happen. That's still going to happen, but the big change is going to be the nearly $3 million of $3 million of road fee money that went to Coast that can now be used on our roads now.
There's $6.50 of each road fee that's paid out of $6.50 out of the 50 that is directed towards Coast RTA. Is that right? So that money is what he's talking about. That's coming back in to the
Thank
system.
You.
Yes.
And yes, and also with Ride 4 coming in with 200 miles of new paved roads, that will help take some pressure off our road fee funded dirt road paving. That can also be used for resurfacing now. And then on top of that, Ride 4 itself has a resurfacing line item. It's worth 400 miles. 2/3 of that go to the county. So we're talking 270 miles over the 25-year program. Let's call that 10, 11 miles a year for the next 25 years. So all of that has added is an added boost to our resurfacing program. And this graph here, it's hard to see the numbers. Left side again, that's where we are basically today. The right side is projecting way out 25 plus years from now. It says 2051. This is the number on the bottom right, which is a long time. But the green line shows what our projected mileage is based on our budgets. And you can see where we are, again, that kind of shows that boost we're getting now for next year with Ride by having these additional revenues in there. So where the green line is above the red line, we're in good shape. Where the line crosses, that's where we start to see maybe we need to start looking at additional funding. That's the main question I think that was being asked. And the biggest change from where we were before November to where we are now that we know Ride 4 has passed, is that horizon is pushed out a few years. That line crosses about 2032, 2033, so 6 to 7 years. Now, just to illustrate that a different way, we're projecting a budget of somewhere around 14 million, give or take, depending on what revenue projections are for next fiscal year. That's the middle line. The orange line is if we were still to pay Coast RTA what they get out of the road fee. And our current budget is actually lower than that. I didn't show that line here, but what these lines show is how much, what percentage of our paved roads are in poor condition. That's really bad condition. We're taking good care of our roads now. And that's why the percentage is so low. But what these lines show is that we're going to be good for a few years yet. It's another way of showing the same thing I showed you in the last slide. Where that line crosses, you start to see that increase at about 2032, 2033 in the blue line. The green line is if we were I mean, just as an arbitrary number, I just said, well, if we raise the road fee right now $10, that's what the budget would be roughly. And it shows we're probably spending too much money on our roads because we're down at zero for a dozen years or so from now. So I guess in summary, all this information to try to answer the question, Ride 4 really boosted us for another 6 to 7 years. I mean, we're and my projections, again, as costs continue to increase, as our revenues increase, costs continue to go up. But Ride 4 has helped us overcome that for the near term. 6 to 7 years, we should be good. And I guess the recommendation would be to continue to monitor. I mean, I'm not saying, let's not look at it for 7 years. Let's continue to look at it. Things change and we can adjust. But right now, we're in good shape.
What we need to know now is the net running cost is where we're underwater a little bit. How much is public paying in it for road fees? It's $50 now. It would be, I don't know.
Yeah, we have a, I'm sorry, go ahead.
What Andy alluded to a moment ago was that if we were to spend an extra $10 right now or charge a $60 road fee, it would probably be on the excessive side. I think we're at a good balance. If you notice that the blue line there is about what Andy was saying is going to be our budget levels. That trend where it starts to turn up doesn't mean that the sky is falling. It just means that you've got a few more roads. And if you notice, we're less than 5% in poor condition. Our network, your network, the public's network is in very good condition right now, and we're going to keep it that way. And I think that's y'all's intent. So really and truly, we start to see that trend to change in the early 30s, but it doesn't become a problem up until really and truly the late 30s to the 40s. So we want to stay in front of that. That's the key to it. And that's what Andy was talking about. We want to stay in front of that and anticipate that and stop that increase because you don't want poor condition roads. So I think somewhere in the 2032 to 2034 range, we probably are going to come back to this council and ask for some additional increases in funding. With a source of that, I'm not sure what that would be yet. Maybe it's the road fee. It could be another alternate source potentially. But I think you need to take pride in your road network right now because it is in really good condition. The state is probably in the 30 or 40% roads in poor condition. Maybe more. I don't know what their number is, but it's substantially higher. And that's what a lot of folks equate to their road system. That it is theirs, their state system. But your local roads are in exceedingly good condition right now, and we'll keep them that way so long as you want it that way.
Question. So your anticipation 8 to 10 years is when that that we're going to need that additional money to start paying for that.
Yes, sir.
So for Mr. Spivey, would it make sense for us to somehow start a fund or a collection instead of waiting till we need the money and we don't have it, to collect that money over that time for when we need it and invest that money that it can grow to keep the amount that we're going to have to collect down? No different than preparing for retirement. Let's start saving the money and grow it to meet the need instead of waiting to the last minute.
Yes, sir. I think we concur with the thought of trying to be proactive. I think, as Mr. Gilreath mentioned, it probably is still a few years out before we'd want to bump that fee a little bit, then bump that fee some more. To the extent we can avoid going to a large shift at one time, it helps our taxpayers be able to manage their own finances in that regard. So being proactive and doing it in steps would have great value.
Cool. I see the value in Mr. Massarelli's question, and this is for our lawyer and our administrator. What about if we do a welcome to Horry County? You just moved here from wherever, but you're going to pay an extra $100 to register your car in our county. Nope. Okay. Sorry. Thank you.
Keep us from doing that. And the state implemented that
They've discussed
a year ago or 3 years ago, but we don't get it.
Yeah, if we could have done that a couple years ago, but we can't, so thank you.
No Yankee taxes, Mr.
I was thinking California. Oops, sorry.
Gary, on the monies we had to put in the bag and hold while those lawsuits on the transportation or with the tax money,
Yes, sir.
is that still being held?
That's still being held and earning interest. I think Mr. Markounis
Yeah, you
mentioned
said
that we were getting some good interest off of that.
When's
But
that gonna come available?
we do not know as of this point, but
I mean, there's no future for that money, or?
So it's still in the lawsuit. For whatever reason, they all got, it's not just Horry County that got sued. All had been held up. We did receive a favorable decision earlier this week, which is they have 30 days to appeal. So I planned on briefing y'all sometime after January 9th, depending on what happens.
Now, the money we collect today, road fees, does that have to go in there too?
no.
No, sir. So that's,
Yeah, you adopted a new ordinance which met the state standards or the new standards, and we've been spending that money from that point forward.
Will that help for the future when we get that money back?
Actually, it will, sir. That's not projected in these projections. That would help.
Thank you.
all right. Any other questions? If not, thank you very much.
Good job. Justin School.
Good morning. Just a quick update on the ADA website compliance. We have to follow, or we're going to have to follow the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, otherwise referred to as WCAG 2.1, by April 24, 2026. So we have a little over a year until we have to meet those guidelines. When we first started this project, we were in the middle group of counties or local governments based off the population. They have since adjusted that, so we're actually in the upper portion of that. Any population over 50,000 or more has to meet the guidelines on the same day. When we started, we were going to work with some of our larger counties or municipalities to piggyback off what they were doing and kind of work in correspondence with them. However, now that they have to meet the same deadline, we've adjusted our approach a little bit. So we are currently working with a few vendors to see which one we want to use to help us approach this deadline accurately with the best score that we can possibly get on this. In that, we're hoping to have our vendors selected by the end of the year this year, which means that hopefully by the end of first quarter in 2025, we'll know exactly what we need to do in order to meet these requirements and these guidelines. That'll give us a whole year from that date to update everything we need to update on the website to make sure we have everything compliant. And if we need to find a third-party vendor to meet certain pieces of that puzzle, we'll have time to go out and meet those, find those third-party vendors to meet those pieces. Just to give you an idea of where we've been at, over the course of the last couple of years, we've already updated most of our websites for the font sizes or the differentiating color so that the font and the background color are differentiated enough to meet these guidelines. We are also compliant as far as live video because we have closed captioning on all of our live video, which meets these guidelines as well. There is some other parts that we do have to look into, and some of our vendors that we currently have that help us with recorded video are going to work with us on hopefully in the next year to get those pieces nailed down as well. So from an overall standpoint, we're actually in a much better place than we had originally thought when this was broached and brought up for funding reasons. We're in a much better place than we thought we were going to be. The guidelines are very in-depth. It's about 350 pages when you print it all out, but we are doing much better and ahead of schedule than we thought we would be at. Is there any questions or concerns? No? All right, perfect. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, very surprising.
Well, I do understand I'm sitting in between you and lunch. So I guess I need to be brief. We wanted to update you on one of our last big projects, which is the hospitality analysis. In 2020, we set in motion a plan to utilize the unincorporated hospitality revenues. And over that period of time, we have collected to date roughly $157 million towards this effort of projects, in total of $160 million of projects. We received $94 million in actual revenue from hospitality within the unincorporated areas, and have issued debt of $62 million. Still have a planned roughly $60 million debt to complete this. To date, we've spent some of the funds for public safety, which is $19.7 million. Project spending is $3.3 million. Debt service of $8.8. We have a balance of $124 million, which was outlined to us earlier in this fund for projects. Today, we have excess monies within the plan because not all of the spending actually has been dedicated or decisions on it. And there's 33. We refer to this as the 33.3% of the money has been set aside, and there's $17.1 million that is sitting in the fund today unspent. With 2025's budget, that will increase to 22.9 or roughly 23. We have contingency from interest earnings and excess revenues over budget within that period of time of roughly 4.9 million, which will increase to 8.8 million with the 2025 budget. So there's roughly 31.7 million of funds that have not been decided into how they will be spent within this fund, and still completing the scope of work that we had outlined earlier. What you'll see on this slide essentially is just when the money has been coming in, and includes the planned debt that has been increasing over time, which is better demonstrated by this graph. With the COVID, we had concerns that we would be perhaps lower than we anticipated, but really what came out of COVID was a renewed sense of desire to vacation, and the priority has been placed on that by our society as a whole. So we saw a large jump in our hospitality revenues after that period of time, and roughly we're at that 17.8 million or 17.9 million in 2024. We're just under that in terms of our budget for 25. From a project standpoint, you will see various things being allocated to the different elements of how they're funded. But just looking at the project side, Augusta Plantation Interchange is estimated currently at $100 million. That has been fully funded from the standpoint of Ride 4 now as the backstop. Tadlock Intersection is at $14.7 million. That's a combination of GSAPs, CTC funding, and hospitality here. Hardwick Road has been actually moved into the Ride 4 funding, but James Fraser Socastee Rural Civic Center Phase 1 is recalling it at $34 million, and the Atlantic Avenue Walkmall Drive have been fully funded. So that program is in place, and actually we do have additional revenues of the 31.7 million that we have not made decisions on.
Do we have an anticipated completion date on the Augusta interchange?
Can one of our engineers help me with that one?
Design will be next year completion, and then you're looking at about a 2-year construction process.
So 27?
So we'll wait 27, 28, anticipate time right there.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions about the hospitality? If not, we'll jump into the strategic issues. And we wanted to start first with a quick review of our strategic plan. And that's one of the items during this process of bringing the budget to you into spring. We would like to take an opportunity to review the strategic plan and bring back to you perhaps some recommendations and discussions as we move in that. Because the strategic plan is that long-term tool that we use to help us guide what tomorrow looks like in that respect. We have the comprehensive plan, which planning and zoning does, which is a part of that. And that's slated for update, I believe, as well over the next period of time. So our influence of updating the strategic plan can help guide that process as well. Mission, motto, mission, vision, core values, I think we're all familiar with those. but I just wanted to remind everybody of what we do have. Our strategic plan had various focus areas, and I won't read these out specifically, but it was addressing community character, rural preservation, revitalization, redevelopment, and infill type objectives in that regard. Health, healthy, livable communities, safe communities. We had community facilities and services, mobility and transportation, environmental sustainability, economic growth, community engagement. All of those areas really have a lot of information behind them, but they address what our community will look like and feel like and what benefits are there for our citizens in that regard. My focus, back up one step. I guess underneath each of those, we had various goals that we would had in our plan and addressing public safety. We defined these goals to help meet those focus areas. We also had items for infrastructure, for growth-related items, for various efficiency in our operations, because that's an integral part. It's not just more people, it's doing it better in our processes, as well as focusing on our Horry County employees, which, as we mentioned earlier, are our greatest resource in that respect. We also looked at the funding of county services, as well as for economic development. We would like to take the opportunity to sit down with each one of you individually, to meet with stakeholders from the community, and bring back to you an update of our strategic plan as we go through our spring retreat. So that's one of the requests we've got. My focus has been really looking at four things. One is the quality of life for our citizens, and if you read those other slides, you would see that's interwoven through almost every one of those slides. To invest and develop our team Horry, because they provide the resource to our citizens, and that makes all the difference in the world. To have them trained, equipped, and experienced in their job, we can accomplish the goals that we have set before us. The sufficiency and quality of our services, to make sure we are meeting what our citizens need in that respect, and funding and completing the critical infrastructure needs we have before us. And those are great as we move forward. I wanted to touch you very quickly on some economic trends, just so that you can see where we are today on our major revenue type sources. The Horry County sales tax by month, we do see some ups and downs compared to 2024, which was our highest year, I think, on record, but still well within what we would anticipate in needs of funding our infrastructure there. Sales tax essentially is the RIDE program in that regard, and that's dedicated to that effort. Our unincorporated state sales tax, actually our unincorporated is very consistent with the previous year. If you look at that on a county-wide basis, however, we do see a little bit of a shortfall. So I guess within the cities are not experiencing the same as we are outside in the unincorporated areas in that respect. But I would say we're somewhat plateaued in terms of our accommodations as well as hospitality. We've enjoyed the great increase in that respect, but we do see not a growth at the same rate. So I would use the term a plateau of where we see those variable type revenues. Our capital project sales tax, which various people talked about earlier, we have received to date $758 million on the RIDE 3 projects. We anticipate an additional amount to be received, so that will be $823,000 in terms of revenue at the end of that April timeframe of 2025. So that is a full $231 million over and above the referendum amount. But will be needed because of the cost increases on the various projects that we've experienced. If we look at the 1% hospitality fee, which is our internal item that we use primarily for public safety, we're essentially at an increase year to year of 0.54% or 0.5% over the previous year. So that's trending in a good place. Our 0.5% accommodations is actually down almost 4.5%. So we do see a trend there of flattening at the moment, or plateauing, as I used the term earlier. For the 1.5% accommodations, or hospitality, excuse me, that's down 2% countywide, and that is the countywide number in that regard. But more of that, I think, is impacting the municipalities than it is within the unincorporated areas. On inflation, we are seeing a decrease in inflation, though I would say I don't see that when I go to the grocery store, and our employees are impacted in the same way. But now it's down to 2.6% at the end of October, and the new administration, I think, has it as one of their goals to reduce that even further in that respect. Interest rates were still high in terms of mortgages at the end of November 2024. When we put this together, it was still at 6.84% for a 30-year mortgage. If you look at the last 20 years, that's an all-time high. If you look at a much broader period of time, that's actually still in a good position or a low position. But for the last two generations or generation or so, it is at an all-time high for them. And that being down will impact our area if it sustains at that higher area. But the administration, I think, has a goal to remove that or to push that lower. Interest rates in terms of the effective funds rate, which we borrow at, is about 4.5%. So we do see some decreases in that, which should have some favorable impacts on our CIP and the borrowing capacity we have. Unemployment, and this is an interesting variable that I did not anticipate. But based on our current economy and what we're seeing in the market, I did not anticipate that our unemployment would have risen over the last year from 2.9% to 4.7%. So it's actually higher than we anticipate at this point in time. In those trends, you would see usually we're pretty much in line with South Carolina, which we are today. But usually we have been under the national average for the last number of years. We're actually above the national average for South Carolina as a whole and our area as well in that respect. The state is anticipating an increase in their budget for next year. We do see a 2.5% increase in their forecast at the gross revenue level, but that's actually a 4.9% increase over their budget for last year. So that's almost a 5% increase that the state's looking at to be able to include in their budget for 2026. And we do see from a one-time money perspective, it's about $1.1 billion that they're projecting. And that's consistent, I think, with where they were looking at in the 2024 budget process. If you look at our revenues in total, some of our larger movers, we've talked about the hospitality and sales tax. Our business license are actually trending up by about almost 9% from what we're seeing. Real property tax, we do see going up as well. What we're seeing currently is probably going to be in that 5%, perhaps 5.5% estimate for going into the 26 budget process. EMS fees are up, code enforcement's up, but recognize code enforcement was a decision we made on the actual rate being charged, and that is planned to cover the various positions that they were adding over the, I think, a 3-year period. ROD is right, almost even at this point in time. It's actually up by almost 1% over last year. So that's staying steady and stable for us. Interest income is up, but with the new administration and inflation coming down, those rates will decline as well. So we're in a good position from a budget standpoint. The cable TV fees we mentioned to you last year actually will slowly go away from us. And based on the changes in the state statute, that when it moves to a streaming environment, no cable TV franchise fee is due in that respect. So that's $4 million worth of revenue we will lose over time in that respect. We have to take care of with some of our other increases. So other economic factors, we do have the administration change. We do have a narrow majority of one party. We have continued inflation, but that's under, I think, a much more managed perspective. Our target is 2%, but we do have some things that could pop up that we can't really control, which is some of those military conflicts around the world with Ukraine, Middle East, and I'm not sure where anywhere else may be in that regard. Looking at our operational needs, we've seen this chart, but I think what we wanted to share with you here essentially is that we still are under from a growth of our revenue in regards to the impacts we have from a growth in an inflation perspective. Looking at our increases for next year, we do anticipate approximately a CPI increase of 2.5% in total, and a population growth of 3.5% for a total of 6%, which would say, based on this formula, that we could increase our millage by 2.9 mills next year. We are bringing forward approximately 14.3 mills of what we would call banked mills, meaning revenue or tax increases, millage that we did not use, that we were eligible to use. So in theory, and not suggesting that in any way, shape, or form, we could increase 17.2 mills, is what the state formulas tell us we could use in that regard. Our growth from a personnel standpoint, we did add 95 jobs in 2025, but I will share with you in a moment that probably needs to be approximately 120 at a minimum for us to keep the current level of service. And that would be dispersed primarily to public safety as the largest recipient of that, but it would be throughout the organization from an administrator standpoint, an INR, and other services in that regard. What we see as priorities for 2026 is first a budget policy change that we can forecast the expected vacancies for accurate expenditure projections. That is a change in our budget policy, and we would ask that if council does support that, we are very fortunate that it would be backed by the unassigned fund balance in the general fund, fire fund, stormwater, and recreation. So using it there, we have a protection. If we are too aggressive, we have the means to be able to fund that. But the last slide did show you we currently have 268 vacancy positions countywide. So it is a factor that we will deal with on a continual basis. We anticipate to maintain the current level of services. We'll need to add somewhere between that 110 to 120 employees, and we need to continue to focus on innovation and efficiency to make them more efficient. Those employees can do more in that respect. It's not just adding more bodies, it's doing it in the right ways and leveraging our technology and cooperation between the various departments. We do need to look at salaries for our employees. At the spring budget retreat, there's an inflation and merit adjustment, I think, that will be necessary. There's perhaps even a market adjustment that we need to consider to be competitive within the marketplace. We historically have been in the middle. We have the market leaders, and we were next, and we had several organizations underneath us. With recent changes in the last budget cycle, we actually are towards the lower end. So we do need to address that in some form or fashion. And continued focus on recruitment and retention. To the extent we can retain those experienced people, we can do more than we can with new people in that respect. In addition to that, we have our CIP projects, which have already been somewhat outlined to you. We will do a GO bond issue and lease financing for fire apparatus. In next year, we will complete the spatial needs study for the detention center and then make some decisions about what the scope of that will be. You will notice from the capital side, there's a placeholder in 2027 for a financing, but essentially a placeholder of $60 million. We don't know what that price is going to be in that regard till this study is done and completed. We will have the TRIAD 4 implementation, and we need to continue our discussion, or would suggest we do, on the local option sales tax and a potential future referendum in that regard. That's the one item that would present some tax relief to our individual constituents and citizens, not only individuals, but also the businesses as well. For 2027, we have the existing employee compensation, which we need to continue considering and reviewing. The additional capital projects, which includes the $60 million placeholder for the detention center, as well as a $4.5 million placeholder for the coroner facility, and we'll talk about that in just in a moment, because if we're doing phase 2 of the public safety training facility, we may want to integrate those two together. So we may want to advance that and consider it with the project that Randy mentioned earlier. New positions would need to be added for growth. Excuse me, sir.
Can you just go back to the local option sales tax for a second?
Yes.
Like, if we were able to implement that, what would be the duration and what would be the utilization?
That program would take 71% of the revenue, and it would be tax relief. That tax relief would be divided between the county and all the other taxing jurisdictions within the county, the municipalities, in that regard. So each of those entities would be providing some level of tax credit equivalent to the money that's being received.
So is it simply an offset, or will it increase revenues?
Well, 71% is a tax abatement. 29% is new revenue for each of those jurisdictions in that regard. I think the last number we were looking at, equivalency could be like 17 bills, benefit and new revenue that would be available to Horry County.
Into our general fund?
Well, primarily general, but it's not restricted to the general fund. It could be impacting fire, recreation, any of our other operation type entities.
Is there a temporal port, like the RIDE program, like where it would only last for 7 or 25 years? Is there a temporal aspect to it or no?
I believe that one is until repealed by referendum.
Until repealed by referendum.
Yes, sir.
But
So
we
it'd
have
be
to
indefinite.
make sure we can do it because we were.
Right, there's some question about whether or not we're capped.
Myrtle Beach, right.
Yeah, that's part of what we do need. If you're supportive of that, we need
We're
to go through those
supportive of
motions
that.
and answer those questions.
Yeah, I think anything that gives our residents a 71% tax rebate is something that we would support.
We're- And the next step is to make sure we're not prohibited because of the extra 1 cent that Myrtle Beach does. Okay. All right.
Okay. So in 27, we anticipate a bonding issue for general and fire, as well as issuing that last part of the revenue bonds. That's anticipated under the hospitality program. And the actual decision on the detention center in that respect. And continue, if needed, on the local option sales tax. There are additional requests. We've already heard from some of you and internally as well for new capital projects. We are looking at a James Fraser meeting room addition, a satellite for public works, stormwater, engineering, and fleet to better serve the customers or our team members to make them more efficient. Public Works office expansion and renovation. You've heard about new personnel this morning, and we've got to find a way to address that. Privet Road repaving for that facility. Emergency generator for fleet. Security upgrades at this facility. Traffic signal at Prince Creek and Highway 707 has been mentioned. An auditorium. A fire spare fleet storage facility or facilities to help protect those spare apparatus while they are waiting to be used when needed in that regard. We do maintain that and land for future needs. And there could be needs related to our internal operations, but we just heard about our wetland mitigation bank, and we may need to be thinking about the next wetland mitigation bank for RIDE 4 to complete that project. So that's been very successful for us. I've got two other areas to address if you want me to continue forward. One is just our legislative platform, and then some questions to you. First, on the legislative platform, some priorities. We have the infrastructure funding, because not only do we want to go after what's been asked earlier about the SIB financing, but we also want to consider some federal funding for some of our projects which meet those standards. The Carolina Bays Parkway North Extension, the Augusta Plantation, I think the Highway 22 Southern Connector, the MYR runway reconstruction, which is the project coming down from the airport standpoint, the Rural Civic Center, which we talked about earlier today, the Garden City Resiliency Project. We're continuing to ask funds for that for the burying of the power lines underneath That's something to consider in multiple areas of the county, but that's most impacted there from a resiliency standpoint. The Palmetto Point Boulevard safety enhancements is one of the asks that we will see this year. Conway, Myrtle Beach multi-use path, we've got the initial funding elements on that, but we need more to connect the dots all the way to Myrtle Beach. Forestbrook Community Park, beach renourishment, trying to make sure we've got that recurring match opportunity from the state, as well as additional funding for New Road and that whole SIB opportunity for not only us, but the other counties within the state as well.
That Conway Myrtle Beach multi-use path, is that or does that include or incorporate the Rails to Trails program in any way?
What we're focusing on is to get from Conway down to both Carolina Forest Boulevard and River Oaks Drive, which then connects to the city. Getting across 501 is a challenge. We have not incorporated the Rails to Trails in our efforts. Other programs from a legislative standpoint is to new policies that will bring costs down on insurance that affects our businesses in a very large way in Horry County. They've seen a tremendous increase. Natural gas, which we've heard a lot about recently, and the capacities that are there. The local option sales tax eligibility that we just talked about. 911 inflation indexing and reimbursement criteria for them. As well as energy generation and accessibility. There's another thing that the legislature is pushing on tremendously right now. My point there is that we need a regional generation so that we can be sustainable even in an event of a disaster. Not just having it within the state, but having it within the region, I think is important to us. An increase on the waste tire disposal cap and the fees, as well as the mental health services, expanding that. And municipal annexation and donut holes is not saying that we want more donut holes, it's trying to prevent donut holes in that regard and reduce those. So that's some of the things from a legislative perspective that we are focused on. And as we go through this process, we'd love for you to, if there's other items, to share those with us so we can begin working on those with our delegation. So the last item is just to ask you for some guidance. As we are looking forward to 2026, what are our priorities in that regard? And the first question is, do we maintain the current level of service? Because we will have to add people to do that.
Well, we can't go backwards. We got to at least maintain.
That's right. Okay. We thought that to be the priority council, and we just want to confirm that.
Yes, sir.
The next, well, these jumped around on us. I apologize. Do we prioritize market adjustment to remain competitive and retain our workforce? That's one of the things that we are facing. And we think that's what you're telling us, but I just want to confirm that we need to take what steps we can within the revenue and including this vacancy variance to try to push that as far as possible.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I think we got to take care of our people, and make sure that we continue to recruit, retain.
Number 3, do we prioritize any service level gaps? We will get an enhancement request as a part of this budget process, and they're generally very good thoughts, and that would bring value. But we've been challenged with the fact that we haven't had sufficient revenue growth to be able to address those. To address those would require additional revenue, which would be a millage increase, no doubt. Do you want us to consider that? We'll try to stay within the revenue forecast that we have, or will make out of during the budget process.
No one wants a village increase, but we have to do it. I know council that want to, but we have to. So do look at what we need to do, don't just look at the budget when we stay within our budget, what we've got. That doesn't be the future fix.
Yes, sir.
I think the magic word in number 3 is prioritize. I think we should find out what we need. Where are the gaps? We prioritize those. And if we have to look at alternative revenue, then we'll look at it. And not necessarily saying we're going to, but at least we'll have the information for us to consider.
And if we are eligible for a local option sales tax, and that is successful, that would change the equation to some degree.
Yes, sir.
So, I think you definitely need to be considering that as a possibility when you're making these plans.
Okay. We'll do so. Next, do we adopt a policy change to integrate that vacancy variance in our 2026 budget? Is that something that you are supportive of? Yes, sir. Several years ago, we lived off of vacancy variance. We adopted and balanced the budget off of vacancy variance. We came to a point then that we could hire the people, and we had a 7.2 mil increase at that point in time just to balance the budget because we had relied upon these vacancies. We couldn't operate with those vacancies. We couldn't provide the level of service. It mandated that we couldn't fill those positions. Now, we adopted and added that revenue. So right now, we're fully funded on every position. In our 2025 budget, essentially, we have budgeted 100% of the money necessary for them to be there for the entire year. So we have not included any vacancy. So we've gone from one extreme to the other. This would put us more in a balanced perspective. And we would focus and calculate what a true cost of that vacancy would be, or savings from that vacancy, because it is offset by overtime for the additional people to perform that service. Because we are staffing engines 24/7, we're staffing EMS 24/7. So if there's a vacancy, somebody will fill that shift. That will allow us, in terms, an element of savings, that then that money can be used to either address compensation issues or add the additional personnel, or combination of the two, along with our projected revenue growth for that year. So it's finding a balance in the middle. Not
That's
one
what we
extreme or
need,
the other.
because I remember about 10 years ago, or maybe roughly, I don't know, it was when this started happening, and we overcorrected, for lack of a better description. So it's better to get back towards the center. I think that's a good policy. I think we should explore that.
But what happens, Mr. Chairman, when those vacancies are filled?
They're still going to be offsetting.
Yes, I mean, would we ever be in a position of full employment? That would be the question. And I think we can do better with our compensation to eliminate the level of vacancies that we have today, but I think there's no expectation that we could be at full employment. There's a normal turnover, there's normal retirements, there's multiple factors that go into how many vacancies we have at any given point in time.
We just want a budget policy that more accurately reflects this information.
So you're saying that if we have vacancies, we have more money to get that would pay?
Yes.
And those who don't work and have less turnover?
Well, there is a combination, yes, there is impact that will be favorable to us in that regard. So it will help in multiple ways. Yes, sir.
On the previous side of service level gaps, you were to cite two areas which are notable shortfalls in the number of employees in certain areas. What would those be?
Well, Randy's already raising his hand.
Yeah.
I already knew the answer to the question.
Well,
then why ask?
To give you,
Then why ask?
yes, sir.
In an area like that, do you, where does your along with it already?
Yes, sir. I would like to take an opportunity to do a little research before I answer that question directly, but I suspect it's in two fronts. It's on our public works as well as public safety. I mean, those are two areas.
What do our counterparts in the municipal government do?
I'm sorry.
What do our municipal governments do? What are their budgeting principles in this regard? Do we know?
I would suspect, I would have to ask specifically, but I suspect that they are using some element of this.
And do we know where they stand in a staffing position as compared to us?
I think we will have that answer for you at the spring retreat. I believe they have each been in a similar position as we have, with needing to add staff, as well as needing to increase the compensation to be able to fill those positions and retain the positions they have.
Well, my understanding is, at least in the public safety department, we went from, I wouldn't necessarily say a position of strength, but from a middling position to now we are in a position of weakness.
definitely a position of concern
Yes.
moving forward. And but in what Mr. Spivey's talking about, it makes good sense for us in the budgeting world to look, because we will never be 100% full in public safety. It's as he described, we have such a range of retirement, just turnover, just and growth as it comes on board. Those positions are still funded in full, and then this problem compounds that, because we go from being in a positive projection of filling positions to now we're backtracking and going into a negative, just in the back and forth locally. So it's yeah.
So I think this is a good policy to explore. However, I do think it's really tough for us to sit here and say we're going to adopt a policy one way or the other without looking at numbers, right?
Yes,
what
sir.
it actually entails. And I don't know if you're able to deliver those to us today, so maybe it's best for at the next retreat or at an admin meeting to be able to bring those numbers back so we can actually look at like what integrating this in and to what extent we're going to do it, right?
Yes, sir.
Because the depending on the range of that depends on the risk associated with what Dennis is talking about.
We would need to make those calculations, indeed.
What we're doing now is doing exactly what you said.
Well, it says, do we want to adopt a policy? So I mean, it's just hard to, it's not adopting a policy, it's more like just, right.
Yeah, I'd like to
Investigation.
analyze,
Yeah.
continue the analysis of our options before we make any budget decisions and on policy.
We'll bring those back to you, several options. One consideration also
I have
is
a question on that.
Yes, sir.
We used to operate a variance of about 65 to 68 positions, correct?
We had
Years ago.
unfunded positions, but in addition to those unfunded positions, we also had a variance in there as well. But we physically unfunded, I think that's about the range that I remember, yes.
All of them, I thought. And currently, with us having around 3,000 employees, if we were to go back to that average, say about 3%, that would have come up to probably about 90 positions. And if you average that out at about 75,000 annually, it'd be about 6.7 million added to the budget.
That's the potential, yes, sir.
Which would work, right? Probably.
Yes, sir, and that 2 mil range would be something we, I think, could get comfortable with, that we're protected and not too aggressive. Another question would be to reevaluate our projected debt. We hope that there's some interest savings that we could leverage as well, but just with that comment we made earlier about the coroner, do we try to adjust and align and maybe accelerate the consideration there so that we're looking or leveraging those constructions similar in our time frame?
If we could do more with our current level of, without increasing millage and our current level of debt, then
Yes, that would be the premise, that we would maintain the current level of
yeah,
services.
I would think of course.
Okay. Any changes to our additions to our legislative policy priorities? I mean, this maybe is not something you can answer today, but we need that feedback because the delegation will go back into session in early January, and the quicker we begin those discussions, I think the more impact we potentially can have.
And just going back to what we said before, I think our number one legislative priority right now, based entirely on what we just did with the Ride 4 program, is to attach and go after that infrastructure spending that might be available, because we are in a position of strength right now where we've never been before. I just absolutely think that needs to be the number one priority legislatively.
Yeah, I think we do have an opportunity in that regard.
That's never existed before.
Correct. Or at least not in recent years. We benefited 30 years ago, but
it hasn't existed in 2-3 generations. I feel like this opportunity is more ripe than it's ever been.
Yes, sir. And the last, just to confirm, are we okay with us working on the strategic plan to bring some recommendations back to you there? I think what you'll see is we've made some great progress on a number of those fronts. We probably have a few of those areas we need to refocus on in that respect, and maybe some new things that we didn't think of earlier.
Absolutely. I think we've made some great progress, but we'll look at it and be ready for it in spring retreat.
Okay.
Anybody else have a question or a statement?
Yes, sir. That will finish my presentation. We have just the 2 action items for council to consider.
In your materials, you'll find there's 2 resolutions. Resolution R-142, 2024, a resolution designating projects under the Horry County American Rescue Plan Act framework.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Next up is resolution R-143, 2024, a resolution authorizing the committee to unspent fund balance for increased funding in the disaster relief reserve.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, aye. Any opposed? None, that passes unanimously. We have a tax incentive here. We also want to remind you of the commemorated events for the 250th anniversary. That is all we have scheduled for today. It was a wonderful presentation. I think this might be the best one that I've ever participated in. We covered a lot of material in a short period of time. I'm going to digest it over the weekend and see what I didn't understand. Anybody else have anything they want to say or any questions they want to ask?
Wonderful job on somebody's staff.
Absolutely.
Tom. Good job.
Motion to adjourn.